All right, we are live. We live? Oh yeah, we live. We live. My computer fooling me right now, but blessings to everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are, all over the world. In the Elite Podcast, episode 96. We climbing, man. Almost reaching the century mark. Episode 96, featuring Dr. Jones, Miss Dr. Jade Jones. So I'm really excited about this episode. Me and her dad go way back. Just a little brief, history. Me and her dad go way back. I got into a lot of trouble in complex my freshman year and stuff like that. And he was my art teacher. Last class of the day, he was always cool, man, and he inspired me and he motivated me to kind of change my ways and humble me and force me to really take sports serious. So definitely want to give a shout out to Mr. Jones, man. So, but we here. Happy Sunday to everybody. I hope everybody doing well. If anybody going through any tough times, man, blessings and love to everybody. And if you guys need somebody to talk to, man, you can always reach out to anybody that's close to you. And if you need to reach out to me, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. I'm always there to listen and everything. So, much respect to everybody that's tuning in right now, supporting Dr. Jones and her episode as well, too. Big up yourself, everybody, who commenting and everything. you know. So I'll start with episode 95. Last week was it last week? Yeah, last week. Yeah, last week, because it's Sunday. Last week we had Coach Miriam, former volleyball player out of St. Thomas. Great episode. I remember Miriam in high school competing in basketball and volleyball. So it was a great episode. Her daughter is playing sports, playing volleyball. So she's doing great things. She's coaching, and Senator Sarah gave her the opportunity to coach, and now she's matured and improved as a coach, and she's doing big things. So definitely check out her episode. They have the I think Mark Daniels and some of the coaches. They're traveling to Orlando in the next couple of weeks as well too. So definitely look out for that and support the different age groups in the volleyball teams that will be traveling abroad as well. So definitely check out that episode. Last night we had our coach, Kevin Teagan Shepherd and Coach Basic, Coach Malloy and their team, the VI Elite team. They're up in Atlanta playing basketball, a showcase. Giving the kids opportunities to be seen by scouts, and hopefully they could get some recruits and get some scholarships as well too. So we had some of the high school players on. We had 5 players on last night. So definitely check out that episode as well. That was episode 1 up next. So definitely support the youths and everything. So as we gonna continue to move and we'll get ready for this episode. So I'm not gonna talk too much longer. I'm gonna introduce Dr. Jones. Welcome to the Elite Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm happy to hear that. I'm happy you're excited to be here. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to come on and let's chop it up with the Elite Podcast and share your story as well. So how your Sunday going? Happy Sunday. How's everything going?
Everything's going so far. Good so far. I went to church and just, excited to be ate some dinner and now excited to be on the podcast.
Nice. You eat it a little. Well, I be eating dinner late. So when you say you eat dinner already, well, that's actually it's good to eat dinner early.
Yeah, to eat it earlier than later.
Yeah, so I need to. I'm starting off on the wrong foot already. Eating bad. That's not good. I got to not eating bad, but eating too late.
Eating too late. Yeah.
So, but I appreciate you coming on. How is the weather up where you at?
It was warm. I live in Atlanta. It was warm like a couple weeks ago. Now it's getting cold again. I hate cold weather. So to me, this is cold. I know people live in New York and laughing at me, but I don't like to be like 50s. That's not good for me.
50s. So you prefer more like the 60s,
60s, 70s, 80s. I would say 70s, 80s is where it needs to be.
I got you. I like it. Give me 62, 61, nothing below that.
Yeah. Agree.
Yeah, nothing above 75 for me.
Yeah.
Because in Florida and Orlando, it's real humid.
I don't mind 80s. I lived in Houston. I don't mind 80s. I just
you don't mind 80s?
I love 80s. I hate being cold. You don't understand with the passion, like, but it's okay.
You just mentioned you was in Houston. Houston be getting hot, right?
Yeah,
No.
but I mean, I've even lived in Pittsburgh. It's so cold. I won't complain about warm weather because I hate cold weather so bad. So Houston was fine to me.
You mentioned Pittsburgh too. So you dealt with the snow and the ice and
Yeah,
blizzards. Snow looked pretty when it first come down, and then after
yeah,
a while it get muddy and you drive in, or sometimes you drive in slow, and next thing you know you slide in and all that stuff.
yeah. But never again. I lived there for 2 years and I was like, I'm good.
All right, so it's street. So you don't south now. That's it.
Ain't gonna get no higher than Georgia. I'm good.
So talk about your talk to us about growing up in the Virgin Islands, St. Croix. As a kid, like where did you grow up at?
Yeah,
What
so
area?
my parents are originally from the States, like but my parents have lived in the Virgin Islands since the 1970s. I was born in 1985. And so I grew up in Little LaGrange, which is behind LaGrange in the bush. I went to elementary school at Alexander Henderson, and then I went to junior high and high school at Good Hope School before it was one school combined. So the Good Hope School that was West. And then after that, I've been in the States since college.
Okay, so I lived in Lagrange, so I didn't know you guys live in Lagrange.
Yeah, we still live. My parents still live in Little LaGrange. So like it's kind of behind. If you take some back roads and you keep driving down LaGrange, you end up in Little LaGrange.
Yeah, so because me and my friend, my good friend Neg, we used to always be up in back in Lagrange all the time, getting into all kind of trouble. Yeah, do you know why I live in Lagrange, or you don't know?
I don't know where you live in LaGrange. So I know like so the James, the James, right? Taj,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So like I know them because my sister used to live on their farm, and so like we live, and then I know Rael used to live over there too, and so we live
yeah,
like further back.
yeah. My house is the house across behind the pond.
Oh, really? I see the
Yeah, the
house
White
all the time.
House. Yeah,
You have to get to our house. You have to pass that.
yeah. You got past that. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
that's my
yeah.
house. That's why
Oh, wow.
and
I
that's where
didn't
I
know
live.
that.
Yeah, the whole time.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Right by the mango trees. Them all those
yeah,
mango trees. Yeah, I think they might still be there, but there's a lot of houses built
yeah. I know what
around
you're
there
talking
now.
about. I know that pond, like, because when it
Yeah,
rains, it becomes really, really high, and I'm like, who, and it floods that
yeah,
area. Yeah,
yeah. So I didn't know that. Wow, that's
yeah.
crazy. Yeah. So how was like growing up in Lagrange though, like in Little Lagrange, because there's a lot of bushes, a lot of trees. It's kind of like it's different than like growing up like in.
I loved it. So like I'm one of five girls, and my twin they have sisters who are twins that are a year older than me, and then my second older sister is 4 years, and we used to just explore that area, like just
Yeah.
go off in the bush and like, I mean we found a marijuana patch one time, illegal marijuana. Like we used to like we had animal, like we had a dog used to go everywhere with us. So like I love growing up in LaGrange. I still love that area. It's very beautiful.
You
Sorry, that's my
see,
dog barking.
nah, what kind of dog you got?
I have a small peekapoo. It's a Pekingese poodle mix.
Okay.
A small dog. It's barking at some other dog. Sorry.
It's funny you said marijuana patch because when we that's the mischief we was getting into and stuff like that.
It
You
wasn't
know.
ours, but like we just like
Yeah.
were exploring one day and we just found it, and then my dad was
Yeah.
like, never go back there.
That's how it is. That's how it is when you live
Yeah,
in the hills and the valleys and in those type of areas.
yeah.
So what type of student were you in elementary?
I mean, I've always been a nerd. Like I've always been an A student. I love learning. Like I'm just, I love sports, but I also always love learning. And I was definitely that child who, like, if I got sick, I wanted to know why. Like I was like envisioning what was happening in my throat to make me sick. So
Mm,
like my mom will say, like at 6 years old, I said I wanted to be a doctor because like I just loved
wow.
learn. I just always, whether it was history or science or math, I just always loved to learn.
What about your siblings? Are you guys both your mom and dad are teachers,
Yeah.
so
Hmm.
your household is full of educators. But what about your siblings? Were are you guys pretty similar as far as really into learning, or some was a little bit different. Like how
Some
was
was
it?
a little bit different.
Okay.
So like my older sister Chan, she's a big reader, and so like she was extremely proficient in like English, and she's very intelligent, very smart. She's a lawyer, and then my sister Ebony Indigo, they're very intelligent too, but everyone was on their own pace. And I think what was really good about growing up, like how my parents are, is that they every child was treated differently based on their interests. Like it wasn't like you have to be this person. Like no one ever
Mm,
said you need to be a doctor, you need to be a lawyer, you need to like I think, my parents are art teachers, but they're also artists. And so I think when you have artists, they're very open to people just exploring. So they were really big on just like whatever you do, just be you can't be lazy and you have to be
that's
passionate
true.
about it. So
Yeah.
you're gonna do something. Like we were never allowed to like just stay home and like sit on the couch. It was like you're gonna do something after school. You're gonna do something. We're not gonna tell you what that is, but you better do it, and you do it to your best of your ability. But I don't think it was never like, oh, you have to do this or you have to get A's. It was treating every child based on their own ability, which I'm very thankful for. It wasn't like extra
Yeah.
pressure to be something.
And actually, that's how it should be. So they
Yeah.
definitely did a great job. What so I never really crossed paths with your mom, but I was pretty cool with your dad. Like, did your parents talk about themselves growing up as kids? Did they talk about their childhood a lot with you guys or their parents?
Yeah, so my parents taught us a lot. So, Black history really, really isn't taught in schools, but my parents taught us that all. I feel like me and my sisters always joke that, Christianity won and then Black history too was like the religion of my parents. So I learned a very young age that, my grandparents were sharecroppers. My great
Mm,
grandparents were slaves, right? So like, they came from Georgia, moved to New York. That's when my dad grew up in New York. Then he
okay.
moved to the Virgin Islands. So my mom moved to the Virgin Islands, and the importance of like African American history, Afro Caribbean history, because we grew up in the Virgin Islands. So, very young age, like we were taught about our own family history, but the history of kind of just African Americans and Afro Caribbean people. So that was really, I really appreciate that portion of my childhood.
Yeah, definitely. And I know as you get older, you probably appreciate it more.
Yeah.
Because I think that's important. Growing up as a child, getting to learn a little bit of your family history, and learning about your grandparents and stuff like that. So you kind of have a little bit of a type of foundation of of everything that you could kind of pass it on to your next generation within your family. So were were your parents strict as far as bring the grades you brought home?
Um, I mean, my dad not really, but my mom like she didn't like bees. Like, but my point
Okay.
is, she wouldn't do that to every child. I think she just knew for me that like I could do, like just based on like just my level of things. Like bees were mediocre, so she would like like if I brought home a bee, she would, oh Jay, this isn't you. But I never felt it like there are some of my other siblings would get like B's on the regular, right? So it wasn't.
Yeah.
It was kind of just like for each, like I said, each child was taught, treated based on where they were, right? So like, and for me, like I just always loved to learn, and so it wasn't, they were strict, but not in like the sense that I ever felt like a pressure to be something.
Yeah, they saw the standards you get each of you guys had, and they tried to hold you guys to that standard.
Exactly. That's a
Yeah,
that's a beautiful way to put that. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
and that's important because that's something like I as a parent I kind of learn with my son.
Hmm.
Seeing where his standard is and kind of holding to that standard, but don't make him feel like I'm pressuring him. But it was more of me teaching him accountability at a young age.
Hmm. Yeah.
Holding him accountable. So that's amazing, man. Definitely much love and respect to your parents.
Yeah.
So when did you start getting into sports? At what
Yes.
age?
So like I said, I feel like my parents introduced us to everything. And then whatever stuck, stuck. So it wasn't like, so we like when we were really young, they put us into dance. And that was cool, but I don't think any of us were like passionate about dance.
Yeah.
And then, they wanted to make sure that we knew how to swim. So we started a swimming class to the St. Croix Dolphins. So at the
Mm,
time, there were two swimming teams on St. Croix Dolphins and the St. Croix Barracudas. And we really just enjoyed it. It was like a lot of fun. So like I swam competitively until I was like in sixth grade. And then it wasn't into sixth grade that I started to play basketball. It was more so, swimming is fun when you're young, but then for me personally, as I got through puberty, right, and like then I learned what a perm is like getting in the water every day no longer became fun to me. And a lot of the girls, Alexander Henderson, were playing basketball. I said, oh, I'm gonna play basketball. Why not, right? And so I just loved basketball. It was like, I mean, I had no direction. It wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna play basketball because of this. It was just like you went out there. I mean, I was all not coordinated and was just like grabbing the ball but I really enjoyed it and it was a lot of fun. So then like when I went to Good Hope for 7th grade, I continued to play. And so I actually never played junior high school. It was a weird thing where like
Wow.
at Good Hope, we barely had enough people to field a team. And so they had a varsity basketball team. And there was me, the twins, Lauren and Bianca, and a girl named Jade Daniels. And we liked basketball, but it was only 4 of us interested in playing. So not enough for the junior high team. So they put us on the varsity team. So I was like, I went from like 6th grade, the first time playing basketball, to being on this varsity team because they didn't have enough people. And at that time, like Complex had like Martha on it. Like,
Yeah.
and
They
so
had a
we played
squad.
against, I mean, they laugh because, everybody, they beat us by like a million gazillion points. But I mean, y'all were
Yeah.
playing against, like, I was 11 years old when I played, when I was in
Wow.
7th grade. So it's just like, I still had fun, but I mean, like, they slaughtered us. Let's be real.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough.
Yeah.
So did anyone kind of guided you through basketball, like work with you, trained you, help you, taught you the game? Like, was there that person?
Yeah, definitely. So my 7th grade year, we had a coach. It was a parent that was volunteering, and then another woman named Anne, and they both left the island. Like they had the family moved to the States, and then we didn't have a coach. And so my dad actually played basketball in college, which I wasn't really aware of as a child. I mean, I knew I used to watch basketball. We had one TV in our house, and every Sunday my dad would watch Michael Jordan play on the Bulls. And so
Yeah.
that was like kind of my first introduction to basketball. And so then he was like, hey, I played basketball and we needed a coach. And he said, do you want me to coach? I was like, yeah, yeah. So then he became my coach. And when I was in 8th grade, my dad is very goal oriented and he was like, do you really like playing basketball? I said, yes. He said, you can go to college for free and you are one of 5 children. And we did not, by the time we hit number 5, we don't have money to send you to college. So he's like, you can get a scholarship if you take this serious. So I was thinking like 8th grade when he started coaching me was the first time I really started taking basketball serious, like practicing outside of the practice time. Every summer, my dad took me and my sister Ebony to New York, and we used to play in Brooklyn in the
Wow.
summer league there. And so like we had this plan, and I loved that. I didn't play because my dad wanted me to play. I played because my own joy, but I would never have made it as far as I did without my father because of all the things that he showed me based on his basketball, knowledge and history, and
Yeah.
also Coach Bud Hazard. So he was our teacher at Complex, and he came along and he started coaching us too. So both of them together, I think, really laid my foundation of like being a foundationally sound basketball player. And I'm just so thankful for that experience. I mean, it was hard having your father be a coach, but ultimately it helped me.
Yeah. Mr. Jones and Bud Hazard, rest in peace, Mr. Hazard. Those guys, man, they tall guys, So
Very tall,
yeah,
very tall.
So when you see them, you be like, yeah, they play basketball. I had I had one of Tegan's players last night. His dad coaches him as well too, and I asked him, was how difficult it was to separate that from the kid and the parent and the player and the coach. How was that journey like for you? Like how did that transition go? Was it tough? Was it easy? When did you realize as a child, like, you know what? He's not being my dad right now. He's actually being my coach. So I can't take it like
Yeah.
if he's my dad.
I think it's hard. Like it's
Yeah.
definitely. In fact, I wasn't think so hard in the beginning, but like other kids when the 2 hours, 3 hours of practice is over, they go home, right? Me, I get in the car and my dad's still talking about like, okay, why'd you do this? Why did I get home? We still talking about it. So sometimes it was frustrating because it would be like, no relief from that. And sometimes I'm like, okay, dad, I just want you to like, I mean, even when I was in college, he wasn't my coach no more. And sometimes I'd be like, oh, dad, I have a problem with this with my coach. And he's in coach mode instead of like, I just want you to listen. Like I just
Yeah.
But honestly, I think as I got older, he got better with separating the two. But definitely, I think any child of a coach will have stories of how like sometimes it was a lot. It could be hard because sometimes they don't let the gas out.
Yeah.
But on the other side, I'm so appreciative because between Mr. Hazard and my dad, and just like high school sports in general, that coach really just believes in you, and they just want you to be the best person and player. When you hit college, especially now, it's a business,
Yeah.
right? So as much as your coach likes you, that's how they put their money. This is how they feed their children.
Yeah.
So
It's
you're
true.
more of like a business commodity. And so it's less about you, the human being. It's more about like, are you winning? What's the product you're giving them? So I feel very blessed. And he just gave me good advice. So like, when I was in my junior year in high school, I wanted to do a science camp instead of going to play basketball. My dad used to always have this thing he used to say. He said, while you resting, somebody out there on the court getting
It's
better than
true.
you. He used to
It's true.
always tell me that. He's like, while you not doing nothing, someone is out working you. And he was like, a athletic scholarship, no matter how smart you are, is going to be 10 times better than an academic scholarship. And I didn't understand that.
It's
And so I
true.
was a little
Yeah.
frustrated. So ultimately I decided to go play basketball, which was important because that's where I got a lot of my scholarships that offers that summer. But then when I hit college and I have friends who are on full academic scholarship and they're only getting their room and board, and I'm getting room and board and tuition, books and
Books,
everything is like my
meals.
it was worth meals,
Yeah.
money, like it was worth even, the best for most part for most colleges. Unfortunately, the best academic scholarship is not going to be as worth as much money for you in terms of not having to take out any loans or anything as a athletic scholarship. So he was right. He just had the wisdom
Yeah.
that I couldn't foresee at that age.
Yeah. That's true. And that's why I asked you that question, because it's like, I did, like, I had to go through that with my son too,
Yeah.
and I didn't have like the luxury like yourself, or Chad Malloy, that the young kid that we had on last night, and like my son, I didn't have like a dad as my coach, so I
Yeah.
don't know, like, so now I'm a dad and I'm coaching my son, so that's why I asked you that, because it's tough as a parent as well too, because it's like, you've been through it, the experience, like your
Mhm.
dad experienced, and he knows what he's talking about, and it's just finding the way to get it, to your child, and trying to find that separation. Hopefully the child can find that separation as well, and plus, you as a parent, you care for your kids and you want the
Mhm.
best for them, so sometimes you might go extra harder, and and stuff like that, so, but your dad was right.
He was, but I asked as you as your like you still need to take some time to like, okay, maybe I need to spend a day where we just talk father son time versus like baseball or basketball
Yeah,
time. So
that's true.
I think we both learned along the way that yes, my father had the best intent for me, but two, he also learned okay, sometimes I need to be dad and not just like coach. So I think you find that balance.
That's true, because I had to find that balance too, as well
Yeah.
too. And I found that balance one time after a game. I was talking to my son in the car, and like you said, like, it's still, he just played a game. Maybe he did, and I remember the game, but he played okay, or whatever the case may be.
Mhm.
And I was talking to him in the car, and he was like, I was like, man, you think I'm being too hard on you? And he looked at me dead in the eye and said, yeah, you being too hard on me. And that's when it hit me, and that's when I had to look myself in the mirror and got a reality check.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, you 100% correct. You just gotta find that. You gotta find that. As a parent too. So
And I think it was good that we had Coach Hazard because, Coach Hazard he would yell at you. Like my dad is not really a big yeller, but I mean, Coach Hazard, like, I mean, he was rough. So it kind of was like for some aspects, my dad didn't have to be as because Coach Hazard was hard on me. I could take it. I learned to take it. I learned
yeah,
how to like tune out what I, get what I need, tune out what I don't need. Don't take it personal. But I think that they were like kind of balance each other because I mean, Coach Hazard, I know Julie was talking about Coach Corbett, but Coach Hazard, he was a yeller too. So
He was there, yeah. I never saw that side of Coach Hazard, so
yeah.
I saw the teacher side of him, so I got lucked out on that one.
Yeah. I mean, he's always tell me he's like, you have to be mobile, agile, and hostile. Like that literally was like he would be like, he just wanted me to be aggressive. So
having Coach Hazard and your dad in your life and them, their experience and their knowledge of the game. I mean, it's talk, and I've talked to them about basketball. I have a lot of conversations with them when I was a kid as well too. They're very they're really strict when it comes to like the fundamentals and the foundation of basketball and the principles of pretty much. And talking to your dad and Coach Hazard as well too in the past, they remind me of like John Wooden, because when I got older, I read John Wooden's book, and a lot of this stuff that John Wooden talked about, I remember them, telling me and telling other athletes that I heard them talk to as well. So having that luxury, having these two, legends, professionals, that respected the game, and just some of the questions that they ask you, like you mentioned earlier, like your dad actually, like, you sure this is really what you wanted to do? Like, you got to be mobile, you got to be agile, you got to be vicious. Like, all that stuff is the qualities you have to be a tremendous athlete. So with that foundation you have, when did you saw the change in your skill set and your confidence in playing basketball?
yeah, it takes time. Like, the good thing is my dad, like, Kobe, like, said how he had Kobe Bryant before he died, he had like this long-term plan for his daughter, right? Like, and I think it was for us, like me, people don't really understand, like, anytime I tell somebody I went to Good Hope and they grew up around the time I did, they look at me like, they don't respect you, to be quite honest, in the sports world, right? But like, we just had a dream. It was me and the twins, Lauren and Bianca, and then Jada. And so, when you think about Complex and Central, you have so many people who want to play. They actually have tryouts. But like at Good Hope, we used to have to like beg people to play in our team. So like we had this like long-term plan. Like my freshman year, literally we had like my true freshman year in 9th grade, we had 6 people on our team. And so like we would just work. We would work after our like during our practices, and like just we didn't expect ourselves to win that year. We were young, but we just kept working. And then my junior year, we actually won like the St. Court. We won like the Complex tournament, and we won the league for that year. And it was kind of like a culmination of like all the work that we had put in. So it was kind of like y'all just keep going. Y'all just believe that y'all can do it and keep going. And so like that's probably the only year we didn't have 6 people on our team. So, I mean, there was like, they having to like 12, 15 people on the team that just run us down. And literally we have like 6 people, and like literally always have to beg people, please, will you play this year so we can have more people on our team. So like, but that period of my life, it taught me so much, because it taught me you don't need everybody in your corner, right? Like I had a very supportive family. I had other girls on my team that just really believed, and like, we're like, we can do this. And like, and I've taken that lesson. This is like the importance of sports is less about like, if you're going to be a professional player, but like these lessons will go through for life. Like you don't need everybody on your team. Like believe in yourself, have a good, like I've been blessed. Like God has put me around amazing people throughout every journey in my life, but I don't need everybody. So that lesson, like it has taken me so far in life.
And I get goosebumps when you say that, because that was my mentality, and that's the same thing, same mentality right there. You just said, I'm getting goosebumps you saying that, because it's so true. So talk about your. So I know you just touched on, you didn't need everybody, but how was your mentality as a basketball player? Like when you step between the lines, like what was your mentality? Like how you approach the game?
Yeah, so I think I was just an aggressive player. And I think about like college, like my transition to college basketball, and like starting from the bottom, and then like being able to start my junior and senior years. I'm not the most like fastest, the highest shooter, but I will outwork. It was always, I'm going to outwork you, right? Like I think Julia said this on her thing, where it's like, my dad taught me like, you always gonna need somebody to rebound. You're always gonna need somebody to play defense. And so like if you do that thing better than anybody else, and nobody wants to do those things because it doesn't look good, it doesn't get you in the paper, because if you're not the number one scorer, right? But those things are what win basketball games. And so for me, it's always been I'm going to outwork you. And I don't think when you play Division I basketball, you didn't get there by mistake, right? Like so like I remember like my summers, and it wasn't like in the time of my life, I love this. Like I used to wake up at 5 a.m. in the summertime and go shoot and run. And then we used to play, like I said, we play league in Brooklyn and then come back home. And I really commemorate any athlete from St. Croix who's gone on to do a scholarship, because when you play on St. Croix, especially girls, we literally played against the same two teams the whole year on St. Croix.
Yeah.
Central Complex, us. And then, during the tournament, then, Charlotte Amali or Dorkeen or Tilly's would come over. But when I went to college, I'm playing, I don't have to beg nobody to be on the team. Everyone here is on scholarship. And there are girls who are coming from Texas, playing in the highest division, playing 30 games. They just play so much more. They get so much more. You get better by the more competition you see. So the fact that like we've had so many amazing athletes come out of St. Croix, it's just like, just people really talented and really just motivated to be the best, because you are coming from a larger pool where you didn't get as much exposure to even the boys have man league. Like there was no man league, right? Yeah. So like especially me and my friends on Good Hope, we used to go play like Hess, who can we play with? We used to play against the other boys at Good Hope. Like I think about Pooch and some other people we used to play against, because we didn't even have enough girls to go 5-on-5 in practice, right?
Wow.
Like
yeah.
So my mentality was I'm going to outwork you. I'm gonna out hustle you. I'm gonna just do anything to make myself the best. And that's kind of like, and like I said, that mentality, I took it everywhere with me in life, right? So like I still, through my journey in college, through my journey in medical school, like just sports is so helpful, not only in sport, but like other aspects in your life.
That's crazy. And it's funny you say that, because that's the same. That's my mentality the same way in sports. That's what because I remember you playing, and that's what stood out to me most about you. And like me being an athlete, growing up from a kid, I love sports was my life. So I used to be fans of other players, and I remember watching you play, and that's the thing that stood out about you was just you just used to work hard. You was just 100, and that was my favorite part about your game. It was just like you was giving it 100%. You never backed down from nobody. It was once you stepped in the course, it was just business. And that's from my perspective. And that's why I liked about your game. And the fact that I know who you were because you're with your dad and myself and stuff like that. So it was kind of shocking too, because I was like, man, your dad is like the chillest guy in the world, but then his daughter is like like a beast. Like she and the coach, she's our business. So it was kind of like, man, but now hearing you in depth, no, I see it, so now I could see like, man, if I saw Mr. Jones play, he probably was like the same way. Like when he stepped on the court, he's a totally different person,
exactly.
So, but that's big. That's big. Talk about your transition from your senior year going into college. You're recruited. Like, was there a lot of schools? Was there some schools? Like, how was that process like?
Yeah, so my dad started sending out like for the other girl. Like I would say my freshman year, we had a girl on our team named Tessa Reed. She was tall and she was talented. And so he sent out videotapes, like back in the day before we had like social media and people would blow up that way. He would send videotapes to anybody he like coaches he knew the names of or had the address for. And so Hampton University, which it was at that time in the MEAC, was a Division I school. It's an HBCU. They saw the tape, but they were like, "Oh, we're not interested in her right now. But what about me?" And he was like, "Oh, she's only in 9th grade." And since that time, every year they would send me like cards or just check in with me. And then when I was the summer between my junior and senior year, my dad sent out more videos. But I went and played in like a blue chip camp, which is basically where people from across the nation will come and they'll play. And you play 5-on-5s, and you have it's just all recruiters that are watching you. And so that's when they offered me the scholarship between my junior and my senior year. And then I had a couple other offers from other HBUs like North Carolina A&T, and then like a smaller predominantly white institution in like St. Joseph in New Jersey.
Okay, yes, music, yeah.
But I mean, one blessing at the time, Hampton was like the number one in the MEAC. They had gone to the NCAA tournament a couple of times, and both my parents went to HBCUs, so they really valued the education of HBCU. So Hampton sent me on a visit, and I had never seen at that time in my life anything like that. And then I was like, I'm going here because it was just like I had never seen. I went to Alexander Henderson, which is predominantly Black, and Good Hope is actually mixed. More, it was mixed. It was white, Black, and Arabs, but it was just like they like the drum line, the like all the things you probably see on TV, like about HBCUs. It was just like wow, like I want to go here. So and they were good. They had a good basketball team, and it was free, right? And so that kind of I didn't have to apply for college. You just, as you know, when you get a scholarship, you just sign the paper and you
the
go.
papers,
So I signed in November of my of my senior year, and I was like done. So I went on another visit. I went to North Carolina A&T, but like I kind of knew Hampton had been following me since I was a freshman, and I knew that I wanted to go there.
What was the man? Let me see where I want to go. So how was the getting that scholarship? How was that feeling like? And not just the feeling for you, but your parents. Like how was that like? That experience like?
I mean, I just feel so blessed because like, especially not only coming from St. Croix, right, but coming from Good Hope, like I really feel like our 2003 class was very talented. Like we had won the basketball championship. They had won. I didn't play softball and volleyball, but they had also won in softball and volleyball. And we literally had 40 people in our class, and we were one of the bigger classes in Good Hope. So it was like to get a college scholarship to play basketball coming from such a small pool was like, and that was my goal. When I was eighth grade, I set that goal. I want to play Division I basketball. I want to get a scholarship. And so like, it was like, it was amazing. Like it was, I mean, joy and happiness. I think it's the only thing you can explain that experience.
Yeah. You know, what's amazing about, your story is the fact that like your dad sent a tape for that girl, but they was interested in you, and it kind of goes back to, about the lessons they was instilling in you about the approach to the game, but Hazard and Mr. Jones as well, because that what actually, got you to look from Hampton, if you really think about it, it's always a saying like in my mind. I remember when I was playing professional baseball, my coaches used to always say, no matter if you're playing for the Seattle Mariners, Boomba, somebody's always watching you. Your behavior, your mannerisms, somebody's always watching you. And they was like, hey, look in the stands. You see all those scouts, somebody's always watching you. And it goes back to your situation. Like, if you put in the hard work, you give everything you got, and somebody's always watching, you just never know, So before we get into college, how was life at Good Hope as a student? Because you went to Good Hope, but your sister went to Complex, so how was that like? How was that sister bond? Like, she's at Complex, you are Good Hope, and also you're, at Good Hope is totally different than Complex. So you and your sister is experiencing two different atmospheres. How was that like?
Good Hope, I loved Good Hope. Like, it was a very open learning environment. I think that at that time people were like, oh, if you Good Hope, it's like all people who are white. But to be quite honest, half my class was Afro-Caribbean people, right? And then we also had Arabs, and then of course, you have people who are, of Caucasian as well. So it was very diverse and people who grew up in the Caribbean, people who have family like, from the States. So I really enjoyed Good Hope. I went to Henderson, so like a lot of my classmates from then were in Complex, and I actually was supposed to go to Complex, but I got a partial scholarship at Good Hope, and so with my, after my sister left, my second oldest sister Shan graduated. It's 4 years older than me, and when I was in eighth grade, like that summer, like my plan was my parents were gonna put me at Complex, but she got a scholarship to go to college. So that like financially made it a lot easier on my parents. She had an academic scholarship to go to Fisk University. And then I got a partial scholarship. And so basically it was like, okay, financially we're in a better place. And I really wanted to stay there because my friends from junior high were there. And that's kind of how I stayed. And then, I mean, it was just interesting. My twin, Ebony played on the basketball team. So it was, to me, it was just fun, like playing against them. Ebony
Yeah.
feels a little more animosity towards it. Like when we beat her, we were junior, she was a senior. So we beat them when she was a senior, and she, still is a little bit bitter about that. But to me, it was just like, it was just fun. I had never, and I played with Complex. Like when they would go to like the States, like I would play on their team.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like too far for me personally.
So okay, no. So how was so? By the way, what HBCUs did your parents go to?
Yeah, so my dad went to Fisk University in Tennessee, and my mom went to a
Okay.
smaller college called Morristown in Tennessee as well. They didn't know each other, but they different parts of the state, but they both went to HBCU in Tennessee.
Okay, I spent some time in Tennessee. Well, if you wrote it all together in different years playing baseball
Hmm.
in Jackson, Tennessee. So I've heard about those two schools.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So that's awesome. So now you transition into college. How was that like? College life. Now you on your own.
Yeah.
Everything. Like how was that like? How was that adjustment?
It was fun. It was scary, but it was fun. Like I said, like I was so excited to like just different air. Like I didn't have to beg nobody to play basketball no more. Like that was a big like people wanted to
That's
be there.
cool.
Everyone was like like everyone was going home. Of course, it's hard like your freshman year because you're having to fight for your spot and But just the whole atmosphere was just I loved my time at Hampton. So just all the stuff that people tell you, oh, you don't want to go. I literally had a counselor when I was in at Good Hope who was a really nice woman who was like, oh, don't go to Hampton because you're smarter than that. And in her heart, she thought that she was saying it from a place of love.
Yeah.
But I was so thankful for parents who went to HBCUs and understood like just how like I met so many amazing, talented, whether that be like a lot of people. Two of the girls that were on the track team while I was there are gold medalists from the Olympics, right?
Wow.
I have friends who are like lawyers and judges and CEOs, like amazing people from the African diaspora, from all over the country, people from from the Caribbean, from even there's another girl who went to Hampton with me, Maricela Soto, who played on
Yeah.
the softball team,
Yeah.
like just amazing people and talented people. And so after I left Hampton, I've been in predominantly white spaces, which is okay, but it's just like you'll never get that moment of just really amazing, talented people who are just free and just learning. And it was I say everyone should go to HBCU. That's just my spill.
What years did you go to Hampton?
I went on 2003 to 2007.
What's so funny is that I was a Cookman. I didn't even know you went to Hampton. I was a
Yeah.
Cookman.
Oh, that's not too
Be-
far. Bethune Cookman. Yeah, yeah. We used to play
yeah,
them.
yeah, because I remember you mentioned Marisol because I was playing baseball for Cookman, and during the end of the season when we had like the tournament, they used to host it at Walt Disney Wide World of Sports. So they would have like the banquet to announce first team,
Hmm.
second team, and stuff. So I would see Marcel there. But I didn't know you on the team. I would have come to the game and support
Yeah,
and
you
everything.
should. Yeah, yeah. It was
That's
like a.
crazy. I didn't even know that.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, so that's amazing. Hampton is like Hampton is the school in the MEAC. That's one of the top schools.
Yeah, it
I ain't
was.
gonna
I
lie.
mean, my freshman year, we went to the NCAA tournament. Now, mind you, Penn State was the number one seed, and they like whooped us. But it was like
Yeah.
awesome to have that experience. Like tell my children, I went to the NCAA tournament. Like like it was a really good experience.
Yeah, that's amazing. Because I just took my son to the NCAA tournament because they had the games in Orlando. We went to watch
Nice.
Duke, and
Yeah.
I was like, man, because as a kid, that was one of my dreams to play in the NCAA tournament. And you was able to achieve that with Hampton winning the conference tournament. You know how I know you kind of touched on it, but like, how was that like being in that moment? Just did you take time to reflect back on your journey when you was in that moment? Just like you
Um,
know.
I think I didn't play that game, so I'm probably a little more mad than bitter. But like
Yeah,
now looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, it was great. At the time, I was like, yeah, you can't come off that bench. But
yeah, true
I'm a
that.
freshman,
That's
so
true.
I mean, now I'm so thankful like to have like all these experiences that I've had. Like, I played on the VA national team too, and like we got to travel to all these different places. So like places that my parents couldn't afford to send me. So like Guatemala and like Jamaica, Trinidad, like, so they paid for me to have my passport, my very first passport. So like basketball has given me a lot
A
in
lot.
life.
Yeah. So yeah, so list some of the countries, you play for the VI national team. Talk about that
Yeah.
experience like, playing because sometimes when you play for the VI national team, sometimes you would play with a lot more older, players that's been there for a few years ahead of you, and you might have heard of them. So, kind of touch on like, your first time playing and what it was like to actually rub shoulders and be teammates with some, amazing players that was ahead of you, that you
Yeah.
probably heard of.
Yes, like I think my first time I played, it was just we were going to, I think we played in Mexico. I think we played in Mexico, in the Central Basket Tournament, and like Tumbi Bell, whose brother was Roger Bell, she was playing at the time, and this other girl named Shaq who was playing for University of Miami, and they were extremely talented players, and so. I was a senior in high school, and there was other people from Good Hope, like Jade Daniels, like I said, Lauren Larson, who were on that team, people from
Yeah.
St. Thomas like Julie Flanders. And it was just like, just like I said, the exposure of playing people from other countries. We got to meet people like Cuba has always had a powerful team. So like meeting them, especially because they are not allowed to leave the country without government permission, right? So like to hear their
Yeah.
experiences. It's just basketball exposed me to so much that I would not have been exposed to with at that age without the means of a sport.
No, you mentioned earlier that I think you said you started your junior year in college, your junior
Yeah,
or
my
senior
junior
year.
year. Hmm.
How was the what was some of the the adversities you faced as a freshman? Because your first year playing, it's tough. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
tough and trying to find playing time.
Hmm.
Because and I told my son this and a couple other players from around the way is like when you get a recruit by a school, you think it's all fine and lovely, and you think the coach is the greatest, and then as soon as you sign and you go into practice, it's a whole new ball game. You know, and it's just like that's just the way how it is, but sometimes being recruited, you see all the positives, but no, you playing in the team and you riding the bench and you getting yelled at in practice and all that stuff is just part of the game. But how was it like? Because you come from high school, everybody who received a
Mhm.
scholarship was probably one of the stars on the team and play high
Yeah.
school and had the luxury, but then no, you have to fight for game time. How was that like?
Yeah, I think coming from good like the Good Hope situation where we took a while to like really get to the point where we were good enough to be, a contender, it kind of gave me that patience because like I went from being the tallest person on the team to like the shortest person on my team. Like there's a girl who was 6'7" and like 6'4", and so like I'm like 6'2", or I'm not even 6'2". I'm 6 feet. They said I was 6'2". Let's be real. I'm like 6 feet. So like I
Basketball
kind of
height,
it
yeah.
was frustrating, but it wasn't as frustrating because it was just like I'm just gonna like I said I'm gonna just outwork. I'm gonna keep working, and I'm just gonna like play hard, right? And I think one thing I look back is like I took it so you should take your sports serious, but I think just like now based on like what I do for a living, like I work with cancer patients, and so like the gravity of life is so much more than a sport. I wish I had enjoyed it more. I guess looking back, I'm like I wish I hadn't been so like if I didn't play sad about it, right? Just like enjoy the moment, like work hard and you'll get there versus like letting it really change your mental status when like life there's so many other things in life that are like way worse than like you not playing a game.
Very, very true. So true. So true. I tell kids that all the time, live in the moment, enjoy the moment, like you just said, because it was the same way, like you take it so serious and everything that sometimes you when you think back in it, you kind of lose track of some of the moments to enjoy
Mhm.
and everything. That is so true. You know, being now you're a doctor, right?
Mhm.
And you was playing college sports. How was that like managing the two? Because I know being a doctor is not easy. With the
Yeah.
classes and and stuff like that, you know. And you know how sports is with
Mhm.
traveling and stuff. You got to start. You got to wake up. Suddenly you have 2 days. It's so many
Yeah.
responsibilities. How was that like juggling both?
It was definitely hard, especially because the culture of sports, especially college sports, unfortunately, is like people don't go to class. People don't take their school serious. Especially a lot of people like I started with did not finish, unfortunately, don't finish college. So like
That's
it was
terrible.
a mentality of like me having to be very focused on, like I said, like your coach can be great, they can like you, but it's a business, right? So they want you to win. They just want you to get enough grades to like play and not be NCAA fined, right?
It's true.
So
It's
it's like
true.
I had to really be really strong minded about that. Like a lot of athletes would let their coach decide what their major was, or like how the classes they take. And I was very like when I started, like no, my major is gonna be biology, and these are the classes I'm going to take. Because I always knew like I love basketball, but I always knew I wanted to go into the medical field. And so like that was like my mindset. I think I got really lucky because my sophomore year, a freshman point guard came in who was just like me minded in terms of school. So we roomed to get like my teammate. She's my best friend to this day. Like my best friends are like come from my college team. And we kind of like just supported each other. Like we roomed together, we like studied together. Like, we had morning practices at Hampton. Our practice was at like you had to be on the floor at 4:30. And sometimes like I have a test, so like I'm gonna be up until like 1:30, have to get up at 4:30 for practice. Then you have class at 8 o'clock. And so like really you have to be like really focused minded to achieve that, because there's a lot on your plate when you play sports beyond like what the other students. But on the other side, I felt like basketball was really good because it was a relief from school, and then school was a relief from basketball. So it's kind of like they were balancing each other out. Like I don't have to always think about this because
That's
I'm
true.
thinking about this, and vice versa.
That's true. That's true. So what? So you're a doctor. What's the title? Like, what's the name? You
Yeah, I'm a breast oncologist, but basically means I'm a
okay.
cancer doctor. But the only cancer I take care of is breast cancer, and I also do research. So like I kind of like a hybrid. I work at what we call an academic institution. I work at Emory University, and I half my week is seeing patients, and the other half of my week is doing research.
Okay. So I know you said you always wanted to be a doctor. What made you choose that part of the field?
Yeah, so like I feel like St. Croix, one is my family. I'll talk a little about that, but I think St. Croix, the Virgin Islands, has shaped me so much. I'm very thankful to have grown up there. Like, so my mom on my mom's side, there's a lot of health issues. Like, she lost her mom at 13 to a stroke,
Um,
and then she lost her brother, who she was really close to, in like 92. He was only in his 40s, and so like I was like 6 years old when that happened, when she lost her brother. I just remember my mom crying. And I remember knowing that like doctors make people feel better. And so I
mm,
think that was like the first time I'm like, oh, if I am a doctor, I can make people feel better. Was like
that's
kind of
deep.
like the first time like that idea like came into my head. And then just the Virgin Islands, like, growing up in a system like the Virgin Islands is beautiful, but our health, even with the best doctors, the resources to provide optimal care may not be there. And so like, growing up, you always hear like, "Oh, don't take me to the hospital." I don't want to dog the hospital, but like,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you know how it is growing up
No,
in the
yeah,
Virgin.
yeah. It's true. Yeah.
And so I just wanted to be like, okay, what can I do to like, help people who are underserved, help people who don't have insurance? Like, how can we get care to the people in those populations? So that was kind of like one of my, that affected me, that shapes me, that still shapes me in terms of the research I do.
Wow, that's doctors make people feel better. That's deep, Jade.
Yeah.
That's deep.
Well, I
That's
mean,
deep.
yeah.
That's deep. No, for real. Because it's like,
Hopefully they make you feel better.
huh?
I said, hopefully they make you feel better.
Yeah, it's true. You know what? I respect. I respect doctors to the fullest. That's one thing. So, like, I appreciate everything that you do and every other doctor in every different field do. You know, so no, like, I'm kind of struggling the way how I want to go with this question, but
Okay.
it's like how how tough is your job knowing that? Wait, before I get into that, do you have to like break the news to? Okay, see, so how is that like with you when you have to break the news? When it's
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
you know,
it's hard, right? Like, so if I chose, when I was in medical school and I told people that weren't cancer doctors, maybe they were like dermatologists or primary care doctors, and they actually, oh, what do you want to do? And I said, oh, I want to be a cancer doctor. And they would look at me with this face like, oh, you don't really want to do that. But my mom and my dad have had cancer. Now, I
yeah,
wanted to be a cancer doctor before I knew they had cancer, but I'm so thankful that I thought they got really good care. And I'm like, if no one does this, right? Like, even if it's a hard job or it's emotionally hard job, like people, like you get to be a part of someone's life during the most hardest, difficult portion of their life. And I feel like that's a blessing. So as hard as it is for me, it's even harder for my patient who's actually going through cancer.
yeah,
Um, and like I always say, like people always think like cancer is not one thing. They're different cancers, and based on the cancer, there's a lot of things that we can do. And so I take care of breast cancer, and a lot of women get cured, right? And then, of course, there are people who are stage 4 who are going to pass away from the disease. But while they're here on this earth, I do whatever I can do to make their life enjoyable and quality of life and their symptoms. So, like, I get to be a part of that journey. And I feel like I'm a person of faith, and I really feel like this has been my purpose in life. Even more, I love basketball, but this is what God, I feel like, purposed me to do. And it's really a blessing more than it is. It is hard. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna say like, oh, sit here. Like I've cried with patients. Like, there are
yeah.
difficult things or difficult conversations. I think for me, what also helps me is that I do research to help improve care. And so that also allows me to feel that, okay, I couldn't maybe help this other person, but maybe something I'm doing will impact someone in the future so they don't have to go through what this other person went through.
You know, so like in my field, and we was talking offline, I deal with like the internet and all that stuff.
Mhm.
So sometimes I will have to deal you know, with customers, and you know how the world we live in now, internet is pretty much like it's
Yeah.
like gold. Everything is on the internet, so everybody need internet services and provide all that stuff. So sometimes I have to go in homes, and deal with customers, and a lot of the customers have to deal with sometimes they're elderly, sometimes they're cancer survivors, sometimes people who is in hospice, and a lot of the time when those people are going through what they're going through, sometimes, and especially the older patients, sometimes they don't have a lot of family around, the kids is
Mhm.
across the country, etc. So sometimes they're by themselves and they have someone to come and check up on them, momentarily throughout the week and stuff like that. So sometimes when they see me, I might be the only person they see besides their doctor
Yeah.
that comes to check on them. So sometimes we have like a conversation, and it's funny you say that because is with sports, it was sports, but now the field you're in is like it's different, and it's kind of the same with my job too because it's like I'm young, and up to today right now, I've been pretty much good with health, never had no really health scare and stuff like that. Besides the stuff that I got into that caused me problems, boy, it was my fault. But you know, I witness people going through what they're going through, and my heart always goes out to them. And I always think like, man, it's tough to be like a doctor dealing with those patients because it's like, hearing them tell their story, and they always talk about life, and they always tell you stuff like, man, you just enjoy life and be happy and all that stuff. So, it always breaks my heart. So I always have a soft spot in my heart for like, you know, patients that's dealing with health issues, not just cancer, but other
Yeah.
health issues as well too. So I always like admire, doctors, dealing with that because I don't, is like when I finish talk to them, I'm like, man, I feel like terrible. Like I feel sad, so I just can't imagine, what you guys got to go through. Why not like do it every day? So you guys, I don't know if and I say this with respect, it's probably, it kind of becomes muscle memory dealing with it, but you still have to deal with the emotions. Like you said, you cry with some of your patients and stuff like that, so, and I know they're pretty, they're grateful to have doctors like you guys to kind of be there for them during in a time of need
And,
as well too.
and a couple things help me personally. Like I'm a person of faith, right? So like for me, even though it is every day, it can still be hard. And I have some young, I can have some, especially when they're really young ones, the 24-year-olds, the 25-year-olds who have like a stage 4 cancer. But I have to be like, ultimately for me, it's like my faith. Like I didn't give this person this. Like ultimately, God used me in this situation. The other thing is I don't do it by myself. Like I have social workers. I have something called a breast navigator, someone that helps them navigate the system. So I have a lot of people on my team outside of myself that are helping predominantly women. I do have some men in my clinic, but predominantly women. I work at Emory, but I also work at Grady, which is a county hospital where we take care of people that don't have any insurance. And sometimes I have patients who are mentally delayed and have no family support. I have all these different things outside of cancer these people are dealing with. But honestly, to work in a system like where I have all these other support systems, whether it be the social worker, the nurses, everyone else is working together to help these patients. Doctors don't do it by themselves, right? It's a whole team. And so I'm also very thankful of all these people who are in this mission of like, especially like I said, I work with underserved people who don't have insurance, who really their mission is to like, how can we help these patients? So that's a blessing too.
I'll ask you this question because I always think about this all the time, and you know, and I always say I was gonna ask anytime I go to the doctor, I would ask him this question, and for some reason I always forget. So, and I have you on, and I just remember. I always think like, when someone is dealing with cancer,
Mhm.
you got to deal with the radiation and all that kind of stuff. And all those stuff is expensive. And I always say to myself, like, man, it's kind of messed up because it's like you got to spend so much money just to survive. Like, is there an and I ask you this, and it's no disrespect to
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the doctors and stuff like that and everything because I don't know how the business work and stuff like that. But you know, do you ever think it ever get to the point where it's like when someone have cancer, and I guess you could say like a certain type of cancer where it's like, you know what, it should just be free where they're treated where they don't really have to come out of their pocket, especially if they don't have insurance and stuff like that, where the government or whoever could take care of that. You think is it ever going to get to a point where that
Yeah.
happens?
I hope so, right? That's honestly my belief. And honestly, as a person who works for a group like a institution, I don't drive I don't drive the cost, and I'm not saying I'm poor, like I get paid,
Yeah,
but me personally, that affected what kind of job I wanted because I wanted to have a job where I was taking care of people who don't have insurance. And so that is why I work for Emory because I see patients at Emory who have insurance and they're covered, but I also see patients at Grady who don't have insurance. The other thing about the state of Georgia, at least for breast cancer, if you have breast cancer, it automatically enroll and you don't makes you a candidate for Medicaid. And not all states are like that, but for the state of Georgia, if you have, so you'll never be without insurance if you have breast cancer, and that's legislation. So, when people talk about voting, like you really need to vote so that you have legislators in place that put that in place. So, like, none of my patients will go without care. I even have undocumented immigrants, so people who come from Central America, and Grady will take care of them, right? So, like, but that was my choice because that is my passion to take care of people who are underserved. So I made sure that I worked in the system that is not a barrier. Now there's still barriers, like I have patients who can't pay their light bill, right? And so this is where like grants for foundations, having a social worker to be able to find these grants so we can help these patients get transportation and like to put on their light bill because if they're not working because even if their medical care is taken care of, there are other barriers to them coming to their appointments. So that was because this is my passion. This is kind of where I work. But there are other systems where that's not the case, right? Where they
yeah.
don't take care of people without insurance. So, but voting and putting into legislation people who will vote. So like, okay, we'll put in bills that if you have a cancer diagnosis, you can qualify for government insurance. That starts from us, people who are not medical, right? So that's kind of how
Yeah.
the change will be made.
Okay. Yeah. That's true. That's true. 100% correct. Yeah. Being in the field, what have you changed the way you eat, diet, etc.
Yeah.
Learn, because I know getting into the field, you probably learn a lot that you didn't know. So, like, how has that changed the way you live your life?
I feel like as an athlete, you have to be healthy. Like you have to like exercise. And I think one thing that's taught me is the importance of food because, you could be an athlete and you could, especially when you're a high school or college athlete, like you not eating well, but you're fit because you just exercise so much.
Yeah,
And so then when you stop, I don't exercise for 3 hours every day anymore or twice a day. So like even if I exercise, I'll never exercise like I did when I played basketball. So it kind of has taught me the importance of food and just like how much processed food as Americans we eat. I was talking to one of my friends, she's a colon cancer doctor, and they're showing that the colon cancer rates are becoming very high in younger people, especially African
yeah,
Americans. And the thought process is that we are eating more processed food. So processed food is anything that like is prepackaged and you put in the microwave or the oven. You did not add any additions to, right? Which a lot of us eat a lot of. We may grow up on that. And so, like, the thought process is that processed food may be the biggest driver why more people are getting colon cancer. Like Chadwick Boseman, Black Panther, he was only 40, right? We're
yeah.
seeing a lot of young people. Diet is less a driver for breast cancer, but being obese is a driver of breast cancer. So really has taught me to pay more attention into like my diet and the actual food I'm eating just beyond like the weight purposes of that.
Yeah, I was actually just reading a story about that with the colon cancer.
Yeah.
And you just kind of mentioned processed foods, and I I don't really. I used to eat processed foods, but I try my best to stay away
Yeah,
from it
me
because
too.
when I'm shopping in the grocery store, when you look, processed foods, and when you look at the can, you see a lot of high salt, a lot of salt, because you to preserve the food and added sugars and stuff like that. That's kind of will you know put you in a bad situation as you consume
Hmm.
more and more over time. So, what are some signs people could look for when it comes to like breast cancer with women?
Yeah, so I'm glad you're asking me about this. So like in general, the average age of someone being diagnosed with breast cancer is going to be like, anywhere from like their 60s and above. But regardless, screening for most women, screening should start at age 40. And if you're even younger than that, I would recommend doing a self exam, and men too, right? Because men can get breast cancer. It's not as common, but it can still happen.
Oh wow.
But like a lump, if you feel a lump in your breast, during your menstrual cycle for women, your breast can change, but if you feel a lump and it's not during your menstrual cycle or it doesn't go away after your menstrual cycle, go to your doctor. There's no harm with having it worked up. Even if you think, oh, it's probably nothing, just go to your doctor. The other thing, some breast cancers, there's no lump, it just appears as a rash on the breast. Go to your doctor. Some of the more aggressive breast cancers, like an inflammatory, can just be a rash, or even like nodules underneath your arm, right? So, like the best thing for breast cancer is to catch it early. Um, and if you can't, because that will prevent it from being a stage 4. So the sooner we know about it, the sooner we can manage and treat it. So definitely, doing a self exam, just knowing your baseline, starting at age 40 for most women, starting to get your mammogram, and then just being aware, like if you develop any new bumps or rashes, is really good, and just go see your doctor. The other thing is, my research is in genetics. So Black women have worse outcomes
Gotcha.
compared to Caucasian women in breast cancer. They're almost 50% more likely to die than a Caucasian woman with breast cancer.
Mhm.
And one of the drivers of breast cancer is genetic mutations, means something like BRCA1 or BRCA2. So this is something that you inherited when you were a child. You didn't know it, but it significantly increases your risk of breast cancer. And if we knew that you had that gene, you actually start screening for breast cancer at age 25. And sometimes we even do surgery, preventative surgery, to help prevent the cancer from ever coming. But the biggest kind of risk for having that gene is having other family members with breast cancer or ovarian cancer or prostate cancer. The problem is a lot of minorities, we don't talk about family history. Like we don't, grandma may not have cancer, but she didn't tell us. Right. So like it's really good to actually have your conversations with your family members about, hey, you ever had cancer, or when did you have cancer, or does uncle have cancer? Because then you can go back to your primary care and say, hey, a couple people in my house have had cancer. Do you think I should get screening? And a lot of times, if you have a strong family history, the insurance will fully pay for your screening, right? So and it matters. It has an impact. So I think along with just knowing the clinical signs, knowing your family history is important in terms of your breast cancer risk.
So like, for example, like if like if a guy, his mom had breast cancer or a different type of ovarian cancer, he should definitely really, really pay close attention, because he could inherit that in his genes as well too.
Yeah.
And it could be that could lead to probably like a colon cancer or something like that.
Yeah, and there are different syndromes, but like, if you even think, okay, we seem like I have a lot of cancer in our family, go talk to your primary care, because there are different genes lead to different syndromes. Like the BRCA one is more likely to give you ovarian, prostate, which can happen to a man, pancreatic cancer, which can happen to a man, and breast cancer, which can happen in a man. Like Beyonce's father, Matthew Knowles, he had the BRCA mutation, and that was his risk factor for getting breast cancer. There's something called Lynch syndrome, which is a different gene that increases risk of colon cancer and bladder cancer, like stomach cancer. So even if you don't have to know the logistics of it, but just if you talk to your family and you feel like maybe more than one or two people, or anyone who's had cancer before the age of 50, right? If you just need one before the age of 50, bring it up to your primary care doctor, because you may benefit from genetic testing, and then because they would offer you earlier screening than the normal age.
Okay, so now bear with me, because you at a different level than me when it comes to this. So, and then me, doing it with the podcast and stuff, my mind is all over the place. Which question to ask next, and still listening to you. No, with the BRCA, you said BRCA1, BRCA2, correct? Now I could find that out, from a genetic screening. You said,
yeah, genetic. It's a test.
Okay.
You just like swab. You swab your mouth. You just find out from like taking spit from like the cells from the spit in your mouth.
Okay. Now, even though so pretty much it's very important that everybody get that test, because for instance, like say someone's family does, the family that a couple generations, no one has really experienced cancer.
Yeah.
But it's still important that you get the screening, because somebody else farther down the line could have had cancer. Is that possible?
But in general, if no one it won't be covered by insurance, and it may be a less likelihood that you have it. So it's more likely to like actually insurance to cover it if there's at least one person with that you are aware of, especially if they were diagnosed before the age of 50. So I would recommend, if you're unsure, bring it up with your doctor, right? And then they can walk you through whether you would qualify or not. So not everyone needs the screening, but if you find within talking with your family that there seems to be people one person being diagnosed very young, or multiple people with cancer, it is worth the conversation. So not everyone needs it, but at least is worth the conversation with your doctor.
Okay. Now, when it comes to breast cancer, I know you mentioned like genetic. Is there any type of lifestyle someone living we talk about breast cancer, like any type of lifestyle, male, female living, that could increase the chances of getting breast cancer? Is it wearing too much tight clothes? I'm just bringing stuff up. The way how their hygiene or anything.
Yeah, so so less of those things. There's some things that women, in general, because it's more common in women. I'm going to talk about women that you can't control. So, or you're not thinking about. So, one thing is women who have their menstrual cycle earlier in life is a risk factor for breast cancer, but you can't control that, right? That's like your biology. The other thing is women who wait to have children later in life. That's like in your 30s. You're at increased risk of pregnancy of breast cancer. Women who've never had children are increased risk of breast cancer. Women
Oh,
who take hormone replacement. So say you went through menopause and you start taking estrogen. So I would strongly recommend against that. But that is a risk factor for breast cancer. Some of the more things that you can control is obesity. So obesity is a risk factor for breast cancer as well as a lot of cancers. And even if you're not overweight, exercise has been shown to be protective. So if you exercising, you're less likely to have breast cancer. And then heavy alcohol use is also associated with breast cancer. So limiting your alcohol is beneficial for a lot of reasons because there's other cancers that alcohol has been associated with too, like heavy alcohol use.
so pretty much stay away from the rum and hard liquor and more
Yeah.
lean towards like a wine or something
Yeah, it's
more light.
okay to have it not, now and then, but like heavy alcohol use is associated with liver cancer, breast cancer, pancreatic. Like there's a long list. The same thing with obesity. Obesity is associated with a lot of cancers. So like having a good diet, eating less processed foods, exercising, that's not just protective for breast cancer, that's protective for a lot of different cancers and diseases like diabetes and high blood pressure. So I mean, those things are just overall good for your health.
Yeah. What about women taking the women taking birth control? Is there any links to that?
So, birth control, the data is, I will say some of it is shown to be towards breast cancer, some of it again. So, in general, we don't make the recommendation of avoiding birth control unless you've had breast cancer because there's a little bit of dose of estrogen in there. What we do recommend against is taking pure forms of estrogen. Like people sometimes will
Okay.
do estrogen patch or estrogen in pellets, estrogen pills. We recommend against that because that does increase risk of breast cancer.
Wow. Is there anywhere besides like like estrogen pills and patches? Is there any other way to kind of gain estrogen naturally? Like, is there any type of some food? Because okay, for instance, like male, with test because male is
Mhm.
testosterone, female is estrogen,
Yeah.
right? Women is higher with estrogen, etc. Is there any type of foods that would help increase your estrogen level that you from your research?
Yeah. So I mean, you don't want to increase your estrogen level, but like
Oh, okay.
you want to do the opposite. So you don't want to give yourself estrogen because too much estrogen is a risk factor for uterine and breast cancer. But there
Okay,
used to
okay,
be some data that because soy, there's a plant estrogen in that can increase risk of breast cancer, but that data has all been debunked. So the belief is that it does not cause breast cancer. But a lot of women take herbal medications that may have like estrogen extract from human beings. So I would just be very careful when you're taking herbal medications to really read the back of the bottle and know what you're taking.
okay. So when it comes to like the estrogen patch and stuff, that's to decrease the estrogen.
That increases. So
Oh, that
like,
increases,
yeah,
but you really don't want to increase it.
you don't want, and that's why we don't
Okay, I
want to
got you.
increase your natural levels of estrogen because that where the concern is with the increase of the natural levels that you're increasing your risk of uterine and breast cancer. And so
Okay,
some women, the reason why most women are taking these supplements is because they're going through menopause, which is the normal state when your ovaries stop making estrogen and they start getting hot flashes and vaginal dryness. And so they give themselves external estrogen to try to offset the symptoms.
okay,
And so if you do that for a little bit, like a week or two, or, that's fine. But if you're constantly, I've met women who are diagnosed with breast cancer and they've been on estrogen for years, right? So like that, like long-term use of estrogen is harmful in terms of your risk of breast cancer. So I would recommend against like chronic use of like estrogen replacement.
okay. Now I understand. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that's some great information. I'm
Yeah.
actually learning a lot. So, do what have you now, women? Have you ever dealt with any women that actually was pregnant and they found out they was diagnosed with breast cancer while pregnant? Have that happened?
Yeah, so I haven't not my when I was in fellowship, yes. So that's the training you get to become a cancer doctor. I thankfully have not, I mean, probably in my lifetime I will. I haven't had any recent patients like that. It's more hard. Sometimes I have patients who are stage 4 and want to become pregnant. and we have to, discuss. Ultimately, the patient can do what they want to do, but like we discuss the benefit and risk of that. But those are hard decisions because
Yeah.
some of the treatments that we give are harmful to the baby, right? Or we're having to hold treatment because of the baby. So it's especially when you're starting off with a woman who is pregnant, there are treatments that we can do while the baby is still in womb, but then there's some treatments we can't do. So it depends on where they are. So if they just are recently pregnant and they are, going into treatment, it's a conversation for the woman if what she wants to decide to do. If they're almost near term, then we may do like a more gentle treatment to start off with. And then once they give birth, then we get more aggressive. So, and it really depends on their stage. If they have a really small tumor and we can just take them to surgery under sedation, then maybe that's what we'll do first, right? And then give the baby some time to grow and before. But if they have a really aggressive tumor, it's like a different conversation, but it is always not an easy conversation because heart is worried about what could the treatments do in terms of harming their fetus, their baby. So it's not always an easy conversation.
That's true. That's true. What? Damn, I just had a question. I had a good question too, and I just forget. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot the question. So, so you probably well, you in the field. You heard about like the alkaline and all that stuff, etc. Oh, before I get into that, this is the question. How many different stages of breast cancer are there?
Yeah, so technically there are 5 stages. So starting from stage 0, it's something called DCIS. It's cancer, but it can't spread. So it's probably the earliest form of breast cancer, and it doesn't have the ability to spread to any portions of the body. But if left untreated, these women and men will have a high risk of developing a more aggressive cancer like 10 years down the road. So we often treat it like an early stage. We, do surgery, sometimes radiation, and a hormone blocking pill for those women for 5 years. Then, the more aggressive cancer is from stage 1, 2, and 3, and 4. So stage 4 means started in the breast, but now it's in a distant site like the liver, the lung, the brain. Oof. We cannot, at this point in time, cure stage 4 breast cancer, but I can give therapy to delay it. And, some women, there's 3 main types of breast cancer. There's hormone receptor positive breast cancer. There's HER2 positive and triple negative. And that's the level of aggression of how fast they spread. So hormone receptor positive often is slower spreading than the HER2 positive and then the triple negative. And I have one woman who's like in her stage 4 diagnosis for 10 years, right? So like, wow. That's great. So like just having stage 4 doesn't mean you're going to die tomorrow, right? But most women will pass away from their disease, but the timing is different for each patient. Whereas my triple negatives, unfortunately, the average time can be like 18 months. Now some live longer, some live shorter. So it really depends on the type of cancer. Stage 1, 2, and 3 is early stage. So like it means that we can cure. We can go to surgery, radiation, give chemotherapy or other blocking medications, and we attempt to cure it so that it doesn't come back.
Okay. So at what stage is radiation recommended?
Yeah, so early stage breast cancer, we often do radiation, but for one of 2 reasons. So if the woman's breast or the male chest breast area, if you have a right breast cancer, the first place the cancer is going to spread to before it gets to the rest of the body is these things called lymph nodes that are underneath your arm. They're like little beans. Yeah. And so if a woman, you don't always need radiation. So the reason why you would radiate somebody is there's 2 types of surgeries you can get for breast cancer. One is something called a mastectomy. That means they remove all of the breast. All the breast. The other surgery is something called a lumpectomy, which means they're only removing the tumor. They don't remove the rest of the breast. And so if you have a mastectomy and you have a small tumor and no lymph nodes, you don't need radiation because we feel your risk is low enough that the risk of the cancer coming back, the radiation is not needed. But if you have a lumpectomy where they conserve the breast and they just take the tumor, you always need radiation. So like, and it's not, one is not better than the other. It really is a woman. A lot of time it's a woman's choice. But if you have the lumpectomy, you will always need radiation because they did a study that without the radiation, when you do the lumpectomy, it's not, you don't have good outcomes in terms of how long the women live. So you always need radiation if you have a lumpectomy. The other reason why you would do radiation is sometimes with the mastectomy, women have large tumors, like over 5 centimeters. That's when you need radiation because the tumor is so big, there's a higher chance that there are little cells that have started to spread. And then the last reason is if you have like lymph node involvement. So if your cancer already started to spread to the lymph nodes underneath the arm, they have to do radiation for that too, just because you're trying to kill off any cells that could have like start to travel and can increase a woman's chance of the cancer coming back.
Okay. So when someone is, like when someone is diagnosed, do you guys really like provide information as far as you need to be on a certain diet or anything like that? I know you mentioned with the alcohol and some of the processed foods and stuff like that, boys. Is it like, do you guys provide like that information and kind of, is it really like strict where like you need to, really, really stay away from these type of stuff?
Well, I kind of have two approaches, when you're talking about early stages versus stage 4. And my early stage patients, all my patients meet with a dietitian. I have a dietitian that I work with. They meet with them. They go over diet. But I try not to be too strict, especially with my patients on chemotherapy, because chemotherapy makes you not want to eat. And I don't want my patients to have weight loss on chemotherapy because I need them to be strong. And if the only thing they want to eat is ice cream, give them ice cream, right? So then once we get over the treatment, the chemo, then yes, let's focus more on weight loss and diet. But having cancer is an extremely overwhelming thing, right? They're having to deal with, especially the mother, the matriarch of their family, right? A lot of these women have children, they have husbands, they were working. So they're just trying to process their cancer diagnosis. They're trying to process, like not being out of work, if they have to be out of work, how to take care of their children. And you don't want to overload them with too much. So I try to, they'll meet with a dietitian, but not be too strict about their diet until they're finished the more aggressive therapies. And then we'll focus on that. Of course, my stage 4 patients, we don't do surgery. And in general, we don't do radiation on them because it doesn't help them live longer. About being more strict earlier on. But once again, it more is like, how can I get these women to treatment, but also help with them in terms of the diet and everything else. But you don't want to be too hard because it can be it can be very overwhelming.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. Now, okay, it started to get dark on your end, so I just wanted to let you know. I don't know if you want to turn on a light or anything.
Yeah, I'm gonna turn on a light if you give me one.
Just because. Yeah. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Okay, she's back. I just removed it. So
back.
Okay.
Came on.
Yeah, so I appreciate all the viewers tuning in and and the comments and stuff. I appreciate you guys. So what do since you're a doctor, are you dealing with breast cancer and researching, etc. Do a lot of your friends, former teammates, friends that you grew up with, really like lean on you and ask for information, contact you behind the scenes?
I think my closest friends are the ones I met like in college, and then I have close friends from like medical school and residency. So I definitely have the nurses, people I work with now. I think my family leans on me, which is I'm the only doctor in my family, right? So they definitely, and even my extended family, like all my sisters are married and their family, and I feel like that's important to me because that's really why the reason why I even want to be a doctor was because I wanted to help, my mom and my own family. So I always, I've gotten pictures of people's poo. I've gotten pictures of things like. So I'm always, more than welcome. Even people I haven't seen for years will call me and say, "Hey, my dad was diagnosed, and even Mr. Hazard, before he died, I talked to him about his colon cancer, right? Because
Oh
I just
wow.
wanted to make sure that his doctor was doing the right thing. Um, and I'm definitely always here for advice, but I always recommend you should go see a doctor. Like talking to me does not like exclude you from seeing a doctor, having someone examine you, and you can always run things by me, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't go see a doctor. And
That's
I
true.
always say that. I was like, I think this is this, but you should go see a doctor.
Let's see a doctor, yeah. So you mentioned they say you like poo and stuff like that. Is there like are is there symptoms that is there symptoms like when you pee, when you poo, or other stuff like maybe you throwing up or having a fever, just whatever the body is producing. Like, is there any type of symptoms where maybe like it could be like a symptom of cancer?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different cancers, over hundreds of different cancers,
Yeah,
right? So I always say everyone should have a doctor, right? Like you should go get an annual exam. You should get screened. Cancer is bad, but guess what? Heart disease is the number one killer of Americans, right? So like
that's
there are
true.
other things that you need to make sure that you are up to date with. And so going to a doctor, being plugged into a system, getting an annual exam, being up to date on your screenings. They just increased the screening for colon cancer. It's now 45, and they're even discussing decreasing it to age 40 for people of African descent because we are at higher rates. So definitely you need to be plugged into a system. Make sure you're update on all your screening, whether that be colon cancer screening, breast cancer screening. If you're a woman, cervical, pap smears for cervical cancer screening. Um, is just very important. And yes, you can have people like me who are like family friends who are doctors. And that way, when you don't feel well, like sometimes cancer can present like as a vague symptom. Like I just feel more tired and my energy's not coming, or I'm losing weight. A big one is you're losing weight unintentionally. You're not trying to lose weight, but you're losing weight. You're having new pain. Like, so, back pain is very common, but especially my women who have had breast cancer, unfortunately, that can sometimes mean they have cancer has spread to the bone, right? So you
Mm,
don't want to be a hypochondriac, but going to a doctor, getting workup, reassurance is out. Don't ignore if you don't feel right, especially if it's lingering, especially men do this all the time. Unfortunately, a lot of my men, they'll come in with a later stage. I have 2, 3 men right now, and it was like, your arm is swollen. How long has it been swollen? Oh, a year. Like, well, you didn't think that was, like men are more likely, I feel like, to ignore things when they're not right than women. So don't ignore things. Just, one visit to the doctor. If it's nothing, then you don't have to go back, but just don't ignore it. New pains that don't go away. And yes, more than likely it's not cancer, but you're not able to use the bathroom, you're constantly constipated. Really, it could just be the food you're eating, but you're having blood in your stool, you're
yeah.
having black stools, right? You're having nipple discharge, you're having fluid, like that's fluid from your nipple, right? That's not normal. Don't ignore those things. Go see a doctor and get that worked up.
Yeah, yeah, that's important, like you mentioned. So you always want to have a doctor. You always want to get your yearly checkup, etc. And anytime you see something different, just go see the doctor. Communicate.
Yeah. And I will say for women, a lot of, unfortunately, women will say, I didn't get a mammogram because I don't have insurance. A lot of states, and I'm not sure if this is in the original, but I hope it is, have programs where you can get a mammogram for free. You just have to look into it. You just have, a lot of places have that. So because of the need of screening, I don't think it's true for colonoscopies, because unfortunately a lot of those have to go through a GI doctor. But mammograms are done by radiologists, and a lot of places have programs where women can get mammograms for free. It just takes some digging into and Googling and finding centers that do that.
Okay. So are you doing your research in your expertise? Is there any other fields that you are kind of have a great idea of besides the breast cancer, etc.
Yeah,
Health
so like,
fields?
I went through, when you do your fellowship, so to get to where I am right now, so I do medical school, which is general, right? And then I specialize in for 3 years in internal medicine, which is like general medicine, kind of like a primary care doctor. So you do the heart, the lung, everything. And then you do a 3 year fellowship. And so like when I was in fellowship, I took care of all cancers, like colon cancer, lung cancer, sarcoma. But I personally just really love breast cancer and I wanted to do research. So I really wanted to be more focused. So I do breast cancer, but my knowledge is really my training is all cancers and even
Okay.
general medicine because that's kind of the route, the million years it took me to get here. I had to do all that training before I got here.
Has do your job ever get over? About to pronounce this word so wrong just now. I'm glad I stopped myself. Does it get overwhelming too much? Does it get too much overwhelming?
I think the medical field in general can be overwhelming because like you see a lot and we are, how do I say this? It's kind of like sports where it's like the culture of medicine can be to like shut up and put up like you feel that you don't have room for yourself because how could you like take time off when your patient didn't take time off? Your patient has cancer, your patient has this. So I think unfortunately a lot of doctors will burn out of medicine, which means basically they get so overwhelmed that they quit. But I think
Oh,
taking time for yourself, and I think that's anything where you have a job where you work long hours and you deal with a lot of different personalities. You have to learn to take time for yourself. You have to learn to replenish yourself because you can't be good for other people if you're not good for yourself.
that's true. That is true. So, is there? They have like a lot of shows on TV with doctors and stuff. Is it? Do you watch those type of shows or anything?
I used to, before I was in medical school, I used to watch Grey's Anatomy. And now I'm like, oh my God, I cannot. I can't watch. They're just so fake. They're just so not like, I mean, people are having like intercourse in the closet. I'm like, I can't. I can't. Like they're just so far from the everyday truth of reality
Yeah,
of what we do. So I don't know. I
they
used to,
rep-
but not any, I can't anymore.
they represent the medical field in the right way.
Yeah, even House. I'm like, what is going on here? Like, I used to watch House, and I'm like, now that I am a doctor, I'm like, he would have been fired. He would have been sued. All the way he talked to patients, like,
So, what during work, like when you're researching and stuff, do you listen? Is it possible to listen to music? Is it how does that work? Like to get your mind right, to relax the mind, etc. How?
yeah. So like, when I'm in clinic, no, because I'm actively seeing patients. But honestly, like that is my favorite thing. Like, like I have this woman she's like 86, and she's just like she's lived a lot longer than I thought she would, and she's doing so well. And every time I see her, she gets so excited to see me, and that just brings me so much joy, right? So like, honestly, that is my patients. They're the reason why I do what I do, and they bring me a lot of joy, even though it can be very hard. When you're doing research, yeah, I can do because a lot of my research, I'm not in clinic. I'm, it's on the computer or I'm doing stuff, and so I can do relaxing things then, but not when I'm seeing, not of course not when I'm seeing patients.
Okay. What be outside? Do you have anything outside of work that you do, like any type of, how I could say, like, kind of like I guess you could say like a seminar or like a training or something, like you do your own thing where like for instance, like you do something like virtual where doctors come on and you guys discuss and talk about researching or helping doctors that's coming up, etc., giving them advice on how to see things and etc.
Yeah, so I am in the act. So when you finish your training, there's a lot of different settings in which you can go into, and I chose to go into the academic setting. So it's a lot of that stuff. So like I'm actually I meet with my boss who's my mentor every week, and we plan out like my research. I
Okay.
am in a master's program, almost done this, a
Oh,
clinical research master's program. In addition to like seeing patients and different to research, we have meetings every week about our clinical trials that we have open at Emory, screening patients. So when you're in academic medicine and you're doing research, there's all these things that we are doing to in terms of making our research better, in terms of we have something called tumor board where we discuss difficult patients with like the surgeons and the radiation doctors, and we try to come up with a group plan because breast cancer is not just treated by one person, it's different fields that are working together. So, and this is why I kind of like what I do, because there's something different every day, and there's a lot of different moving pieces to my job. Whereas some people who work in private practice, they're just seeing patients every day, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that, right? It's just when you're in academics, the focus is patient care, but it's also like research and administrative and teaching. So I also do like some teaching for the fellows, so the people who are currently in training. So it's just kind of like a different world than just being like a traditional cancer doctor who's just seeing patients.
So you mentioned earlier, like it's so many different cancers. Which cancer is there one cancer that is just the worst?
Yeah,
Unfortunately,
there's a couple cancers that are just the worst. I think personally, my aunt died of pancreatic cancer
mm,
2 years ago.
yeah.
And that one can have is really aggressive, and it doesn't really respond to a lot of our treatments. Unfortunately, we don't at this point in time have great screening. So the biggest difference is breast cancer and colon cancer and cervical cancer. We can screen, we can catch it early, which is so important why we screen. But pancreatic cancer, we don't have good screening modalities. So when it's caught, a lot of time it's caught when it's already in advanced stage. And then it's not very what we call sensitive, or it doesn't respond to therapy as well. So I would say pancreatic cancer, and there's some other ones, is a really aggressive cancer. And people can cure, but it's not common because we're unfortunately diagnosing it at a later stage.
Yeah, so pretty much it's just hard to detect, like
It's hard to detect,
in the
exactly.
early
And the
stages. Yeah.
cancers that we can detect are often, the cancers that we're able to do better job at curing it because we can catch it early. Like, lung cancer is a cancer that also a lot of times is being caught at stage 4. But starting 5 years ago, they're recommending now if you're a smoker, you should get screening, which is a CT scan every year to try to catch lung cancer earlier. So, right, like these are the why it's important. One, you shouldn't smoke, but if you do smoke, you should talk to your doctor about screening so that we can try to catch a lot of these cancers earlier. So I think the biggest difference sometimes when you talk about these type of tumors is the cancers that we can catch early versus the cancers that we can't. And I think someone just asked a question about what are the symptoms. So that's the other thing. A lot of times people don't have the symptoms until it's later. And so symptoms, eye yellowing. So your eyes are white and then they start to get yellow, what we call jaundice. That often can
Okay.
be an obstruction of the fluid that goes from your gallbladder to your intestine, and it's being obstructed at the pancreatic. So if someone says, "Hey, your eyes are getting yellow," you should go see your doctor. Abdominal pain. Other things is diabetes. So insulin is made in the pancreas. If there's something wrong with your pancreas, it may not be able to uh, make insulin. So you sometimes people who have diabetes later in life, because diabetes is common, but maybe getting diabetes later in life, can also be a sign of pancreatic cancer. So unfortunately, the symptoms of pancreatic cancer are very vague. They're not very specific. And that's another reason why it can lead to later in life being diagnosed, but could be like eye yellowing, abdominal pain, fatigue, unintentional weight loss, diabetes at a later age without a family history of diabetes, or some things that could be a sign of pancreatic cancer.
Great question. That's some amazing information, man. You the real deal, Jade. For real. You the real deal. You the real deal. Do have you ever experienced this? So like you mentioned, like sometimes you know a male will get breast cancer. Is rare, but it happens. Do you ever run into where it's like sometimes a patient don't want to see a female doctor? Have you ever experienced that in your field?
No, honestly, I've never. Now, if I maybe was a urologist, those are people who do what's more the male private area.
Yeah.
But I've never run into anyone who does not want to see a female doctor, because I think one, women really respond to women, and then men also respond to women. So especially when it's not like having to do it. I mean, the breast area is not very private to a man. So
Yeah.
overall, I have had a really good response to patients. And I will say a lot of times patients will come to see me because I look like them. That's another thing. I've had 3 patients from St. Croix. That's been really special to me. Like 2 of them know my mom. And so like, a lot of times people will seek you because there's something about you that they can relate to.
What is the, have you met any patients where they kind of like, due to like religion or whatever it may be, that they decided like they didn't want to do any type of radiation or any type of treatment, and it was just gonna let it be. We're just gonna let it be how it is.
Yeah, it's normally the women who want to do herbal treatments.
Okay.
And it kind of makes me like if you have, especially if you're early stage, and this can be Hispanic, or honestly it's a lot times more Hispanics and minorities that will approach this way. And sometimes it's even early stage, like stage 1. Oh my God, if I could just let me just take that tumor. And it is learning for the patient. Sometimes you just have to be patient, right? Like I have my agenda. I want to cure you. I want to treat you. But I have to be respectful that there are people coming from different cultures, different backgrounds, different communities, and they have different beliefs. And so I have to be patient and just gain trust. And hopefully in the meantime, while we're trying to do this relationship, their cancer is not getting any worse. And I've definitely had it. And I would say maybe 10% of patients will say, well, I'm going to go off and go to Mexico or do my herbal medication. And I'm not, to be quite honest, I'm not one of those doctors that is against herbal treatments and medical treatments. But a lot of those things don't have evidence, which is say that when I give a patient a drug, it had to go through a clinical trial where they have used this drug on like tens of thousands of women. And it shows that it is effective for breast cancer, right? And a lot of these things, these treatments, have no evidence that they're effective, other than the fact that they're just not a modern, like they're just not on the market as a modern medication. So I always say, well, let's do this. And as long as this herbal medication doesn't interact with your chemo, you can still take it. A lot of times it does interact, or you can take it after, right? So I don't try to shut down people's beliefs, because I think a lot of times, unless I feel like it's really erroneous, because a lot of times that leads like a combative relationship between you and the patient. So I respect your belief, but let me tell you why this is a good option for you. I had one woman who was Hispanic. She's from Mexico. She had this fixed belief. She had a 1 centimeter tumor. She's like, if I do surgery, the cancer is going to spread. Which is it's like, no, surgery is the only thing to cure you. So the surgeon told her that. Yeah. I told her that. I had my attendant who was Hispanic tell her that. Maybe she would relate to her more. But it was me learning that, like, she was distrusting of Western medicine. And in her community, the people she trusts is the one who's telling her this, right? So she has more trust in her community, which is understandable, than like these Western doctors. So I just I put her on some therapy that wasn't curative. It was just kind of hoping to hold the cancer at bay, and hope that she over time will make the decision that she wants surgery, because without surgery, she's early stage. I cannot cure her. So I've had to learn. I mean, patients teach me. I teach patients a lot about their cancer, but they teach me a lot about just life and living and being respectful. So I may not agree with what you do, but all I can do is educate you, and then you make the decision, and I'm going to respect your decision, because I did my best in educating you on the benefit of risk. And I never try to talk down to people. I never try to make them feel like their beliefs are like, like not valid, right? Because you're trying to gain trust in people, and you don't want to come with a combative relationship with people.
That's true. We have a viewer question, but before we get to the viewer question, I wanted to ask you a question based on that too. Now, was it hard for you to get to that point of understanding, or it took time? Just because with your job, you might be passionate and you really want to save everybody's life. Did it get to was it hard in the beginning when you first started out, or you kind of had that mindset, where you respect people's choice, etc.? How was that?
I
That
think I was
transition.
raised that way, but at the same
Okay.
time, it wasn't necessarily easy because, like, if you know you have, like, oh, we could just take
Yeah.
this out and you could be cured. This will never be a problem. Sometimes that's hard to like let go, and even it's a learning process. You know, they always say there's an art of medicine, and basically that means like on a multiple choice question test, it'll say, what is a drug to treat A? And it's easy to be like, okay, I know that answer, B, right? But people aren't like that, right? Like the art of medicine is what you learn that's not in the book. And that is an everyday process for me. I've learned a lot from just experiences and working with patients and people. So I wouldn't say it's easy because if sometimes you're like, so like I have the answer. Why can't the patient just take the answer? But you have to realize that like people are coming from different backgrounds and
Yeah.
places, and you learn to listen to patients. And sometimes, you listen to patients and they move in a way that is not harmful to them, and that's a learning experience for me, right? It's like, because it's not in the book doesn't mean that it's the wrong answer. And sometimes it is. I will have patients who went the herbal route, and unfortunately they come back in their stage 4. I've seen it, right?
Yeah.
Where they disappear for a year, they did the herbal route. I mean, I had one woman, she wasn't initially my patient. She was coming to me for a second opinion. She did the herbal route, and then she was coming to me. She was so sick, she couldn't even make it in. And
Wow.
it was a new patient. She said, well, is there any, she was on basically bedridden, couldn't get out of bed, became stage 4. And I'm like, it's just too late. Like at this point in time, she's knocking, unfortunately, on, she was near passing.
Yeah.
And I was like,
To
if
that
I had
point.
just seen you sooner, if you had come sooner, right? So you see that outcome.
It's tough.
But like I said, you can't force someone into making a decision. So hopefully if they don't agree initially to treatment, I have them come back in like 2 months. Let's
Yeah.
see where you are. Like, so you're gaining a trust, you're gaining a relationship with the patient so that they trust you to make decisions. Or maybe if we start treatment, maybe the normal treatment is a high dose, but maybe I'm going to start this patient slower because if they have any side effects, they ain't coming back, right? So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like
That's true.
maybe I'm taking a different approach than what the book says, but ultimately it's better for my patient and their relationship with trusting you with their care, and just learning to really listen to patients and not always have like, okay, I have the answers, like, you know.
Yeah.
So that's
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 true.
a learning process.
And I think in your field, that's important. It's important in every field that you have to deal with a patient or even a customer.
Yep.
You just gotta be able to, listen and, respect their wishes and stuff like that. That's very important. So we have a question here. I've heard that some people use marijuana to treat some cancers. Is there any research done to prove that?
Yeah, I mean, there's been research on that, but marijuana does not treat cancer. It's not been shown to like kill cancer cells, but marijuana has been used, at least CBD oil and other things like that, in terms of helping with the symptoms of cancer, like nausea, vomiting, or the symptoms of treatment of cancer. But to my knowledge, no evidence that it is actually going to kill a cancer cell, but has been used, especially in places like medical marijuana, right? So like
Yeah.
people are having nausea and vomiting from their cancer, or people are having it, or poor appetite as an appetite stimulant, right? It's not approved in, marijuana is approved in like Washington and California. And not approved in every state. So if it's not approved in the state you are in, sometimes a group of doctors called palliative care doctors can prescribe it through like other means. So definitely something if you're to talk about with your doctor, but not to actually kill the cancer cells.
Okay. You mentioned. Have you ever? This I had this question earlier. Have you ever witnessed someone get lung cancer and they never smoke in their life?
Mm-hmm. So about 25% of lung cancers are not related to smoking. They're
Wow.
actually driven by certain mutations, like something called the EGFR mutation. So they're not hereditary mutations, but these are mutations that these women or men have. That's my uncle.
Yeah.
Sorry, he commented.
No,
They're,
no,
they're,
it's not
they're
long. Yeah.
mutations. Hi, Uncle Willie. So, Uncle Junior. There are mutations that these people pick up along the way in their life. So, about 25% is not cancer related, and it's just very unfortunate. And there's like maybe 10 different mutations that can cause lung cancer that is not related to smoking.
Okay. Now, you mentioned smoking. I mean, the risk just increases for lung cancer. Is there a difference between smoking cigarettes, smoking weed, smoking like cigars, and then you have those like vape
Yeah.
stuff, like the cigarette vape stuff? Is there a difference between which one increases your chances of getting lung cancer more than the others?
Yeah, so anytime you're smoking anything with tobacco in it, so really the tobacco product that is hazardous to your lungs, right? That is building up in your lungs, and that is the thing that is causing mutations and different things and causing the lung cancer. So that's going to be your smoking, cigarettes. That's going to be your cigars. In general, marijuana by itself, as we know it right now, is not a lead-in driver of tobacco, but a lot of people put other stuff in their marijuana leaves, right? They're putting other
Yeah.
chemicals in their marijuana, and that can increase. And vaping too, they put other chemical. Think about it, you're inhaling chemicals into your lung, and those chemicals can cause damage of the cells, and that is what leads to cancer cells, right? So tobacco is a main driver, but there are other chemicals that can cause it. Marijuana by itself has not been a strong driver of that, but a lot of people are putting other things into their vapes and other chemicals into their marijuana that can be causing increasing risk of cancer over time.
Okay. So whoever is like, hopefully, stay away from the cigarettes.
Yeah, definitely cigarettes, cigars, vape, like all that stuff. Marijuana by itself, like I said, is not a strong driver, but people put a lot of other stuff as they roll their, put in their marijuana.
So you're in the medical field, and and this has been a big topic in the news. What's the name of that?
You're talking about Aprenza, the weight loss pill?
No, not the weight. Okay. Let's talk about the weight loss pill. But is the other one is that drug that a lot of people is dying from? Where, like, if you get close to it and you smell it, you could get an overdose.
Yeah, I'm not sure what.
Someone in the comments, it's a lot of users is using it, and it's like it's very deadly. I forget the name of it. Oh my gosh. If someone view it, if you don't have an idea what I'm talking about, please help me out. I forget the name of it. It's but let's talk about the weight loss. I'll try and figure it out while you so that weight loss pill, you say it's fentanyl. Yes, thank you.
Fentanyl is a narcotic, like, and it should be it is very dangerous narcotic. I mean, it's not. I would say, and used in the right scenario, there are a lot of cancer patients who are stage 4 who are on fentanyl prescribed by palliative care doctors, and they're often used not first line. It is escalated to that when they have poor tolerance to other narcotics. But by itself, especially if you have never used fentanyl, will complete. So basically, when people think about opioids, right? So that's oxycodone, morphine. So they work on your pain receptors, but they can also cause sedation. They can cause your respiratory rate to slow down. They can cause you to be altered to the point that you stop breathing. And so if you're just doing fentanyl, or it's unfortunately what's happening is a lot of common street drugs are being laced with fentanyl. So people are not aware.
Oh, you froze. Hopefully you get it back.
That fentanyl is even in there, right? So it is an FDA approved narcotic for cancer patients and patients, sometimes who have like chronic pain diseases. And often it's like one of the last lines, like people who've had morphine and oxycodone and they're not responding. But unfortunately, it's being used in street drugs. A lot of times people are not aware of it, and it's too powerful. And people are dying because kids, right, are dying because they stop breathing, because that's what an opioid can do. So I think that's very concerning. And unfortunately, the best way to avoid it is just not to do drugs. I know I sound like I'm a dare person, but
no, it's true. You're right.
A lot of times, at least, what I've been seeing is that a lot of people are doing marijuana or taking oxycodone, and they're not aware that fentanyl is in that, right? So
Yeah.
this is being laced in a lot of different, like more common street drugs. So there's no way to know if you're taking it or not. So I think that's the scary part of it.
Yeah, that's true. You mentioned that viewers, I appreciate you guys helping me out. Thank you. You mentioned the weight loss pill. It's called, you said Stenza? Stenza?
Imprinza.
Oh,
It's a
Imprinza.
diabetic
Yeah.
medication that has been shown to help weight loss. But I think the most important, first of all, people are prescribing it to people who don't have diabetes, and that's not what it's approved for. But no pill is going to be the solution to all your answers, right? So, like on average, the Imprinza drug, people with diabetes, it helped lose about 14 pounds. People on average lost 14 pounds. But guess what? If you don't exercise and you're not eating right, you're going to gain that weight back. and you're going to continue. It's not going to be helpful to you. So, it's nothing wrong with weight loss pills, but the weight loss pills have to be used in addition to changing your diet and also with exercise. Because if you don't do those things, one, you're not going to effectively lose weight. And even if you do lose weight, you're not going to be able to sustain that weight loss.
Okay. Is there any weight loss pills that is recommended to take, or is a little bit safe to take?
Yeah, I mean, all of these have to go through your doctor. I mean, there's two diabetic medications that are being used for weight loss. There's also an anti-seizure medication that has been shown effective for weight loss. But like I said, none of them are going to be chronically effective for you if you don't change your diet. And there's no easy. Even people, unfortunately, I mean, I have had patients who undergo weight loss surgery, and they get the gastric banding, and they lose weight, but then 5 years later, they're their weight again, right? Unless they commit, right? The patients that will commit to sustainable weight loss are the people, in addition to the weight loss pill or in addition to the weight loss surgery, are making diet changes and exercising, right? If you don't do those things, no matter what you use, the weight is going to come back, right? You're just going to find a way around. I had one patient, she lost all this weight, and then she's like, oh, I just eat more frequently now, because she can't eat a lot at one time. So she just found a way to eat more frequently. So it's like smaller. So it's like, if you're not motivated to actually change the way you're eating and your habits, figure out why you're eating. Sometimes it's stress. It's just going to all come back. So
that's true.
There's no easy, as you know from athletes, right? You're not going to play Division I baseball or any sport just by saying, I want to be a Division I athlete, right? You have to do the work. It's the same thing with anything in life. Like you have to put the work in. There's no easy path.
That is true. Before we transition into the rapid questions before we close out, is there, before I get to my question, is there any advice you want to give, or anything that maybe I didn't ask about pertaining to your occupation that you would like to get out, that you think is important for the public to know or list to hear?
Yeah, I think I have two things. I have one for little kids dreaming to be an athlete, dreaming to be a doctor. That
was going to be my question.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's perfect. Go ahead.
I would say just, you don't need everybody to be on your team, right? You just surround yourself with good people and just believe in yourself and just work hard. And the dream may not come true like tomorrow or the day after, but if you keep working, everything falls into place. So I'm a big faith person. For me, it was like my faith in God, and then the amazing people he put around me, and just need to be everybody don't need to be on your team. And then the question you asked, health wise, I would say, establish care with your doctor and keep up to date with your screenings. Don't ignore, something don't feel right. You're losing weight, something go see your doctor, right? And if you see a doctor and you feel like they don't address your needs, go see a second opinion, right? We're not all created equal. There may be patients who don't like me or see somebody else, or I always feel go see, if you don't feel like I try my best, but if you don't agree with me, go get a second opinion. I never feel offended, right? you need to feel that you listen to and learn to. And if you went to a doctor and you didn't get your issue addressed, just go see someone else. Don't put off all doctors. Just go see somebody else.
That's important. I'm glad you said that. That is very, very important. That is very important. What's your message to kids that's thinking about not just kids, but anyone that's thinking about becoming a doctor? Is there any advice you want to give to them as far as how, you know, which direction you want to go within the field, or classes, or the best route to go to achieving those type of goals?
I would say everyone's path is their own. You don't need to look like another thing. Like you don't need to look like everyone else. Like so, I played basketball at Hampton. I had a really good GPA going out, but I had other than a good GPA, I had nothing on my application, like research wise, all these things that in general to get into medical school now, and even then, you need to have good GPA. You need to have a lot of extracurricular activities. You need to have research, because it's very competitive. And so I played basketball, but I always knew I wanted to take a year off after I graduated because I just wanted a break from the intensity of like every day having to wake up early. And so I did 2 years of research at the University of Pittsburgh, which was extremely helpful because that's where I got a lot of the stuff that I needed that I didn't get during my 4 years of undergrad because I was so focused on basketball. Like I did research, I did volunteer, I shadowed with doctors. And so I remember I had one person tell me, well, if you take time off, you're never going back. That wasn't true, right? Like I knew that my goal was to be a doctor and nothing was going to shift my direction. But I also knew that I needed a break. And now a lot of people do that. A lot of people take that gap year between college and medical school. And I'm so glad because once you start on that direction, there really is no breaks. Like you do medical school, then you do residency, then you do fellowship, then you're working like 12 hours. So I'm glad I had that break. But at that time, it didn't look like everyone else's path, right? So you have to do what's best for you, even if it doesn't look like what everyone else is doing, and it will work out. So I guess that's my biggest, recommendation for people who want to pursue medical is that, yes, you need to go to class and you need to, pay attention and get good grades. You need to be, involved with research. I would say if you have teachers that you really like, ask them, hey, that's how my research opportunity came. I said, hey, I want to do research. I don't really know how to get into it. I really knew nothing about it. And they were able to like, hey, we know this person at University of Pittsburgh. You can go work with them. And so it's just like, ask the people around you because they're teachers, your mentors. Because a lot of times they have opportunities that you're not even aware of. And a lot of people are wanting to help people who just have an interest and desire and passion. So your path doesn't need to look like everybody's, but just make sure that, you're being true to yourself.
Well said, well said. Very important. Heal up, Langolo. Heal up, heal up.
Yeah, healing.
So now, is there? No, you don't have to answer it. Answer it if you don't want to, because because this question is about your goal. Do you have like a personal goal within your occupation, your job, like in the next 5, 10, 15 years? Do you have like a goal that you're striving to, that you want to do?
Yeah, I think from a work standpoint, like I said, growing up in the Virgin Islands, my own family experiences, like disparities or differences in our, as African Americans, Afro Caribbeans, our rates of death compared to Caucasians, I really would like to see that close. And one of the things, like I said, genetic testing, our rates of genetic testing are a lot lower than Caucasians. And that is where my research is. So if where I would like to see in 5 years is that the research that I'm doing has closed that gap. That something I'm doing had a local impact and a national impact, so that is no longer one of the barriers contributing to our higher rates of poor outcome in terms of breast cancer. So like that would be amazing. We'll see. But that's like my dream.
That's big. That's big. That's big. All right. So we're gonna get into some rapid questions, before we close out. So you have seen the show, so you probably familiar with maybe with some questions. So you might be cheating a little bit, But if you had a message to share with the world, like to put on a worldwide billboard, what would it be?
One message for the world.
You could have multiple. You could have a multiple. But like some messages that you kind of live by. So
Be kind. I guess that's, I know that's really like big, but just like be kind. Like we have so much things in this world, and like you never know what someone is going through. And just like that compassion of a smile or being, can bring a light to somebody else's day. And so I feel like there's so much animosity in this world, like Republican, liberal, conservatism, this, or,
yeah,
like it's just like be kind and try to put yourself in, have empathy, really put yourself in other people's shoes when you're trying to address issues with people, because you really never know what other people are going through. And that's kind of something I've learned along my faith journey with God. It's just like, you just, be a light, just be kind.
that's, that's true. That's it's so important. We need, especially during these times, we definitely need that. Okay, so you have four sisters, correct?
Hmm.
Including yourself is five. Describe describe each of them with one word.
Oh my God.
So you gotta say, I know you gotta say each sibling name and describe them with one word.
Can I get 2 words
Yeah,
for
you could
sibling?
get you could go anywhere from, you could go 2 words or 3 words.
I think my oldest sister, Tanya, would be like inspirational but stubborn. Like this woman, she's like very stubborn but inspirational at the same time. Um, my second older sister, Shan, is brilliant. Um, she's brilliant, and we used to bump heads so hard when we were kids. Oh my God. I always give her 1 year. She's brilliant. And then my sister Indigo is hard love. And why I said it's like Indigo is very loving, but she try to act like she's not. So it's just like someone who's like who always have your back, but she act like she don't like you, but she loves you. And then my other sister Ebony, probably of all, they were all close, but I'm closest to my sister Ebony. I mean, what can I say about Ebony? There's so much. I mean, well, she got some rage, but she's like she's loyal. She go to bat for you, but she you
Yeah.
don't mess with Ebony. So I was like my loyal, loving, raging sister Ebony.
Nice, nice. I love that. I love that. Okay. 3 to 5 words to describe your mom and 3 to 5 words to describe your dad.
Oh my God. So my parents are my heroes. Like if you don't want people will say like what is the inspirational person, like people say Barack, Michelle, like my parents are my biggest influences. And I would say my dad would be hmm, like he's a humble giant, right? He's not a very like flashy person. He's extremely goal oriented and disciplined. So I guess that's like multiple words.
Yeah.
Homogenetic, goal oriented, and disciplined
Discipline.
um, are probably the words that, and very loving, like my dad. And my mom is just like, she's tenacious. She's a leader. She's like, she moves to the beat of her own drum. Like my mom is just like, she's amazing too. So,
Okay. 5 words to describe you as a person.
oh my God, really?
Three to
Like,
five words. I give you a break. 3 to 5 words. I got you thinking. I got you working.
I think I'm compassionate. Um, hard worker, disciplined. That's three, right?
Yeah. That's
I'll
good.
go with compassionate, disciplined, and hard worker. I'll go with those three. And intelligent. I'll go that way. I'm gonna give that to myself. Intelligent.
Okay. And an album you play without skipping a song.
Oh, the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill.
That's a good one. That's a classic.
It's like I feel like that's the like album of my childhood. I love that
That's a
album.
classic. Yeah, that's a great album. That's a classic. Favorite music, favorite musical artists or artists, if it's more than one.
Mm. According to Spotify, it's a hybrid between Afrobeats, Burna Boy, and Christian contemporary music like Maverick City music. It's really random.
Man, Afrobeats is big now. But the
I
last
love
few people we have
Afrobeats. I
had on,
love
yeah.
Yeah, Burna Boy, and then but then it's like I also listen to a lot of Christian music. So basically, my two like artists I listen to was like a Christian band called Maverick City music, and then like Burner Boy. I don't know what that says about me, but yeah.
Nice, nice. Good choice. Good choice. Langolo said, I'm killing you. I'm killing you. They're not rapid questions. Okay, next one. What's a song that you love or you love to listen to that people will be shocked to find out?
I think all things Rihanna. Like,
You said
pour it
who?
out, pour it out, let it all fall
Oh,
out.
Rihanna. Okay, okay. Favorite male and female actor?
One. I really like Michelle Yeoh. She's not my favorite, but she just won an Oscar. Like Michelle Yeoh, the actor. Um, I really like Jonathan, the guy from Creed 3. I really like him right now.
Okay.
He was in Lovecraft Country.
Yeah, he's on
He's
fire right now.
Kang
Yeah.
in Ant-Man. I really like his acting right now.
3 to 5 places you would love to visit.
Oh, it's easy. Ghana, and I hope to go this year. Um, Croatia, Southern Italy, South Africa, uh, and Ireland.
Nice. Favorite place you have visited so far?
Surprisingly, like I think it's a tie between. Well, Tanzania was good too. Okay, I really loved London. Surprisingly, I was in London this past year, and that was really
Oh
good.
yeah.
And then I like Italy, but then I've been to Tanzania too, and that was really cool. So I think it's a tie between. I mean, Europe in terms of Europe, like London and Florence were really nice, and then like I liked my trip to Tanzania.
5 dinner guests, dead or alive, to join you at a table for dinner, having conversations.
Okay, so probably people like one is my two grandparents, like my mother's mother who I never met because she died at 13. Then my grandmother because she died when I was 21. I really wish I had known her as an adult. Jesus, I know. Who else? That's three. Two other people. I don't know. I'm gonna just skew some people. Maybe Malcolm X. I think Malcolm X would be really
It's a good.
interesting to
Yeah,
meet.
it's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, and then maybe I don't know. Maybe Otis Redding. He's a famous singer.
Yeah, Otis Redding. Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
legend.
he died
Yeah.
at 26.
Yeah, Otis. Favorite book you read growing up?
Oh, there was this book called by Mildred Taylor. It was basically the chronicles of an African American family in the South in the 1930s. So it was Let the Circle Be Unbroken, The Road to Memphis. She
Okay.
just published a new one, and I learned so much about Black history from that book, and just like the dynamics of the 1930s and sharecrop. Like, so my great grandparents were sharecroppers, so like I learned about sharecrop. There's so much about our history that's not taught, and I just
Yeah.
always remember those books being very like profound. And there were like 4 books in the series, and the author is Mildred Taylor.
Last book you have read?
So I'm really big into science fiction and fantasy. So the last book I read was The Gilded Ones. It's a kind of like a science fiction fantasy book. And before that, I read the Shadow and Bone series, the trilogy.
Nice, nice. I'm into science fiction movies. No.
Yeah.
Favorite? Okay, your favorite movie?
My favorite. Oh, I don't have like one favorite. I mean, definitely from the 80s is the Goonies. The Goonies is
Oh,
really
that's
good. My
yeah.
sister so
You
loved
can't get
80s movies.
yeah.
Exactly. And then
That's a
I love like
classic.
trilogy. Huh?
That's a classic. Goonies.
It's a classic.
Never
Like
go
that,
wrong.
that
Yeah.
that movie was awesome. And then I love like trilogies. So like the Lord of the Rings, the Star Wars
Nice.
episode 4, 5, and 6. Like those are my favorite. Like so like the trilogies are really good.
Nice. Last question. Last question. No, actually, I got one more before this last one. Favorite basketball player growing up?
Like growing up, like to
Yeah,
watch
yeah, watch like that you love watching.
Diana Taurasi, easy.
Okay.
She played for UConn. I mean, she's still playing. Like she's like probably one of the best players of all time. But I remember like watching the UConn Tennessee rivalry when they were a rivalry and just be like, oh, I never got to that level, but still, like it was just like amazing as a little girl to watch, like Tennessee and Tamika Catching and then UConn and
Yeah.
like Diana Taurasi was probably one of my favorite to watch.
If you watch cartoons growing up, what was your favorite cartoon?
Oh, definitely Sailor Moon, easy.
What is it?
It's a cartoon called. It's an anime cartoon called Sailor Moon.
Oh, Sailor Moon.
Yeah.
Is it like this is recent?
No, that was like a cartoon growing up.
Really, Sailor? I
They,
never
they,
heard
they remade them, but like the original Sailor Moon,
Sailor Moon. I gotta
I
look.
can
I
even
gotta.
I can even sing like the opening intro right now, but I'm not. But
Oh, I was going to tell you you could go ahead and sing it for the people.
that's okay.
No, no, I'm not.
I mean, I used to always. Me and my sisters were really big into like the like Spider-Man, X-Men
Okay,
cartoons.
yeah,
The
X-Men. Yeah,
Justice
no,
Leagues were really good, like the cartoon movies.
yeah.
Before they made all these live actions, but like the Justice League. So those are really good too. But I think I was like a little bit obsessive about Sailor Moon for a little bit. So
Favorite food?
Caribbean food and Indian food, like two separate different foods. But like I love like especially like Puerto Rican, Dominican food. And then I really love and I didn't eat Indian food until I like came to the States, and I love Indian food. But it's so similar to me anyway to Caribbean food. Like they do a lot of rice and
Yeah.
different stews with chickens. I mean, they do a lot of vegetarian options too, but I think it's a tie somewhere between like Caribbean food and like Indian food.
Least favorite?
Seafood. I don't eat seafood. I grew up in the Virgin Islands and I don't like seafood. I know this is odd, but
Okay.
it is true.
We're not gonna hold. We gonna hold it against you. We're gonna let you pass on
Yeah.
that one. Okay. Last question. No, it's the last one. What you know today? What would you tell a young Jade?
Oh, don't take it so serious. Like I deal with so many serious things right now. I mean, man, if I didn't play a game, it would make me depressed. Like if you didn't like, like you take it, so you need to take it serious so that you can be a elite player. But like there's so much more. I think I would have just enjoyed it more. And I did enjoy it. But I'm like, if you didn't get in a game, if you missed a shot, it's not the end of the world. I think my senior year, I finally realized that, particularly because I realized I was going on to do something else. So it was less like,
Yeah.
I was playing more for fun and not for like the pressure on me. So I wish that I had enjoyed the journey more and just like let loose more. Like it didn't have to be so serious like all the time. That's one thing I do. Like calm down, Jade. It's not that serious. It'll be
Yeah.
okay. Like
I say that I tell myself that all the time. I tell myself that all the time. It's true. It's true. But sometimes that I'm losing the word, but that passion or the way how you took it is what drove you. So it's
exactly.
kind of
It
like
was.
it's
It
a
was.
double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, Dr. Jones, I appreciate you coming on. Do you want to give any shout outs? Anybody you want to give shout outs to or
Yeah.
anything?
I want to give a shout out to the good old class of 2003, just because there was amazing athletes like Jenna Castro, who went on to play softball, and Lauren and
Okay,
Bianca
yeah.
Larson, and Jada Daniels, and Maricela Soto. And anyone I just forgot, like, like we really were extremely talented, and no one ever mentions us, but like we did a lot coming from such a small school. I want to give a shout out to my parents, my family, my sisters, because they are my rocks and like they are the reason why I do this. I want to just, thank you for having me, Moomba. Thank you for allowing me
Appreciate
to
you.
tell my story. Bud Hazard, may he rest in peace.
Yes, rest in
And
peace.
then all amazing people like I said, my parents, family, Karen, like just I've been so blessed that I have been surrounded by really amazing. I mean, I don't have a lot of friends, but I have like my core is like really solid, and I feel really thankful about that.
I appreciate you coming on, taking the time out of your busy schedule to blessing us with your great man. This was an amazing story. Not just that, but so much great information. based on your occupation and your experience, so that was amazing. I really, really enjoyed this episode. Shout out to all the viewers that tuned in, ask questions, and comment and give you good advice. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Also, if you're a new viewer on YouTube, definitely follow the page. We have a lot more episodes. As you can see, this is episode 96, and this is just 96 episodes based on guests coming out. We also have additional episodes that we have also went live with. So definitely, if you guys get a chance, definitely like the page, support, check out the different episodes. Jade, I appreciate you coming on. You're more than welcome to come on anytime if you need to spread some knowledge based on your occupation as well. If you think that is going to be beneficial to help a lot of just help people in general, young, old, kids, etc. You're more than welcome. You can hit me up anytime, so I appreciate you coming on once again. Thank you.
I have one more shout out. I want to shout out my godmother, Lisa Moorhead, because she has been a major impact on my life too. So that's my last cruising shout out.
Yeah, you can shout out more if you want, So
that's it. Yeah, Lisa Moorhead. I won't forget that one.
Okay, so everybody, have a good night. Next week we should be back on once again Sunday 6:30. With a new guest. But I appreciate you guys tuning in. Everybody be safe. Much love to everybody. Blessings.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.